Historic Resource Preservation Board meeting, June 14th, 2023. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Chip Guthrie,
I'm here.
Bob Dorenzo,
Present.
Jamie Foreman, Nadine Heights. Yes. Tricia Allison Mishler. Yes. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or reordering of the agenda?
There are not.
What happened to am I missing something? You're gonna stand up and have pledge of allegiance?
Was it left out?
I don't see it here, but I'd like to go ahead and reorder the agenda for the pledge of allegiance next.
Weird.
All right. Go ahead.
It's my.
Everything's little off.
It's automatically generated, guys, okay?
I'd like to-
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you.
You know, Chip, I'm wondering if we took that off during the pandemic and we never got back on and we just do it out of habit, because remember the pandemic, everyone was doing it. It was like the wrong shot level.
Right.
Oh, breathing on each
On
other.
Zoom, yeah.
Well, it was just the wrong area where the cameras would point when people would do the flick.
All
So
right,
I
I'll
think
move
we
on to,
stopped.
approval of the minutes, April 12th, 2023. So your motion,
I move to approve the minutes.
any discussion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And at this point, I'd like to go ahead and swear in the staff and applicants. If you are here tonight and will be presenting testimony in front of the board, I'd like you to raise your hand and repeat after me.
Stand and raise your right hand if you do plan on giving testimony. If you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So everybody got sworn in who has an item. Do you have an item?
I don't.
You need to be sworn in. Yeah, if you're gonna speak and you have an item.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I noticed we have proof of publication of the 2 cases and 2 ordinances. Is there anything else? Okay, below your audience, if it's okay.
Those were the only 2 cases that needed to have legal advertisements.
All right. Okay, this time I'd like to ask if there are any board disclosures. Does any of the board members have anything they would like to disclose on any of the applicants or cases?
No, sir.
Let the record show that the board member Jamie Foreman is right. So I'd like to go ahead to new business Hrpb project 2300100084.
So let me just pull up the PowerPoint to share real quick. Awesome. Okay, so this is, like our chairman said, 23-184, a COA for roof replacement at 722 North K Street. This is a contributing resource in our Northeast Lucerne Historic District and is in our SFTF zoning district. So this is our little property map. You can see that this is about halfway up North K Street, north of 7th. So this is our existing property here. The property was built circa 1940 in the wood frame minimal traditional architectural style. There have been some rear additions and screen porch additions to the back around 1976. And the roof is currently and has always been a metal shingle roof. So these are just some other ones that were included. So the property owners are requesting to replace their existing metal shingle roof with a light gray gaff timberline dimensional shingles. We've got our design guidelines. You're all familiar with them. So for this wood frame minimal traditional style, most of the roofs were originally metal shingles. And in our design guidelines, the appropriate replacement for metal shingles is metal shingles. So, roofs, they have to get replaced very often. We're aware of that. They're also a very character defining feature for a lot of different architectural styles. So basically staff's analysis is replacement of the existing metal shingles with an asphalt shingle would diminish the historic character and integrity of the property. It is harder to replace and more expensive to replace with metal shingles, but it is possible. There are, from staff's ability to identify them, at least, we've found at least 4 metal shingle options that meet Florida wind code requirements for this area of South Florida. We did also have a workshop last May. At that workshop, the board gave staff direction that we can administratively approve replacement with metal shingles, and gave direction that you all would consider applications to replace with light gray asphalt shingles on a case-by-case basis, with a preference that it would come with an economic hardship claim. Staff did also want to acknowledge that we did recently see a property that we got to administratively approve, 535 South Palmway, replaced their metal shingle roof with new, I believe it was the Barrage brand metal shingles. So part of our request tonight as staff is also that you give us updated direction if you move to approve this application without an economic hardship claim. Just so that we have clarity moving forward on how you would like us to approach these sorts of requests.
But that being said, with our ordinance, anything other than metal shingle for metal shingle would still have to come to the board. That's not something that we can approve administratively, but the direction would be the direction we're providing to the applicants on what you would be willing to see if anything other than metal shingle or asphalt shingle with an economic hardship application, if there's anything else.
So these are just a couple of the roofing options. That bottom right, Victorian shingles by Barrage, is the one that we would see most frequently. We don't see these metal shingles very often because most of them have been replaced prior to, historic designation. So there aren't that many examples left in our city, which is another reason why staff, treats these so carefully. So basically, in conclusion, staff contends that this is not an appropriate replacement that honors the historic integrity of the home and is not consistent with our design guidelines. Therefore, we do not recommend approval. And these are the motions. And I believe the applicants are here tonight to speak as well.
What's your name and address for the record, okay?
Yeah.
You can address what the property is.
My name's Tom Drummond, I live at 722 North K. And basically everything else said, I agree to. The only, and I don't have an economic hardship. I've been remodeling the house and then selling it for, it needs stuff. The concern is affordability. Putting too much money into the house is going to make it less affordable for people to purchase it. The cost, I spoke with or I emailed with the owner of 535 South Palmway, which they're doing the roof right now. And I drove by there and I saw it. They do look a lot different with the styles that are available now. It looks a lot different than what's on the roof today. And the price he's paying is $48,000 for it. His roof is about 300 square feet, or the home is about 300 square feet larger. I have a quote for it's less than $12,000 for the asphalt shingle. So it's an enormous difference in price.
Did you get a quote for the metal bill?
I haven't yet. I now have his contractor. I can get a quote, and I will get a quote from him. I'm assuming it's going to be at least 35,000. I mean, the difference, like I said, I think his is 1,700 under air and another 328 square foot garage, and 722 North is roughly 1,700 under air. So it's that garage is the difference. This property also does have a flat roof section, which can save money as well. So maybe it would only be like 30 or 35, but I can get a quote if that's going to make a difference.
I have a question. How often would you have to replace this metal roof? And is this the original metal roof on now?
It is the original metal roof, which I also drove around the neighborhood. Everybody that has one of these still has it. And I assume it's because they can't afford to change it. And they look horrible because there's, it's an expensive replacement.
And,
The ones that I saw,
and years of painting and they seal them and seal them.
Yeah, that's all you see. That's all you see.
I have a question maybe, to you guys. Is there any environmental options that are preferable? Asphalt versus the metal?
So one of the things when we presented the board and like I said, maybe if it sounds like with some of the questions that maybe this might be right for a continuance with some additional information to the applicant to have them come back and collect. But one of the discussions at that workshop that we did, and we replaced some new board members, was the option to look at a metal roof versus a metal shingle roof. So there's a mixed bag of that, right? So the metal shingle had a certain, the plane of the roof was broken up into multiple individual shingles. Bless you. And so when you go to just a metal roof from a metal shingle, it is different. One of the things that we had looked at before that William had suggested, and we haven't been able to, and maybe if you can talk with a roofer, to look at a metal roof, more traditional metal roof, but have it installed horizontally as opposed to vertically. Because really, when you look at the shingles, they kind of create these little horizontal lines.
Right.
And so while it wasn't exactly the same, could that be close enough? Or do you feel if there's a certain percent difference that then one would be, but the problem is as always, is we always require like for like replacement, especially with some of our materials that are unique. So whatever we do will yield to, if we're too generous, it will yield the end of metal shingles in Lake Worth Beach. So this is why we've been very cautious and very slow with it, is that this was a unique type. At the time when these homes were created, metal shingles were locally available product. There wasn't a lot of roof product. This is type of product and type of roofing was what was used as typical and represents homes of that era would have had this shingle based on the local production of that roof tile in the area. So it does have a historic significance. So how we do that and how we replace that is an important overall discussion, and it's going to have implications for the very few remaining examples that we have
Well,
left.
if you decide to go with a raised seam going horizontally, I don't think they're designed to do that.
So they might have to do a little bit of engineering or something, but it might make the price difference significant enough where if an engineer could say, yes, this is functionally equivalent, because what they do is when they establish it, the engineering spec sheets are for how it is installed by the manufacturer, period. And they test for that. So you want something different, you can do something, you can install it differently. You just need an engineer to be like, yeah, if you install it this way versus this way, still meets WIN code. So this is a hard decision. You guys
The
are.
price difference seems so huge, which is why I asked, is there a benefit? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason other than just price. Is there a reason other than just price that maybe the asphalt is better? Does it last better? Does it have any other advantages? Does it
No,
last less?
it lasts less.
Isn't there a cost calculation? Didn't you say?
That's only for windows, right, Annie?
Or I thought it was cement tile roofs also, there was a cost difference between the two.
No, the only cost difference calculation we have in our ordinance is just for windows and doors.
Okay, all right.
Quick question too, but the economic hardship part of this is also kind of interesting too, because I mean, I'm trying to think of like legally, like the uniform application about how it applies to everyone in the city, and people might be in different, situations on these houses. So what does that process look like claiming an economic hardship, and what is that based on? That, it could mean different things to different people, and some people might think with asphalt, some people might not. I just want some clarity on that, or what it looks like.
Yeah, so in our historic preservation ordinance, it was designed with a section that I can send to you all afterwards if you want to look at that as well. It was designed with a specific section that lays out how to apply for an economic hardship, what kinds of evidence the board might consider, and then it would come before you all as part of the project is we want to do this and this is our economic hardship claim and this is our evidence for why this this qualifies.
And then personal information becomes.
No, well, what we do not put that personal information online. We strike out any referring and then we have the applicant before they submit to us, strike out their names, their personal account number, anything that would be uniquely identifying. And we try to ask for the minimum to be respectful of that, the absolute minimum necessary to support their claim.
And I think the key there is we make sure we're doing evidence-based decision making there. That's the key. So.
We also had a case, I believe it was a couple of years ago, where a homeowner in South Palm Park wanted to change the lateral lines. She had metal on there, I believe, and she wanted to change it to the five feet front window, which, you know, I'm kind of partial to that, but I'm looking on our guidelines, and it shows the metal shingle roof, and it says successful replacement is a metal shingle roof. Less successful replacement is a three-dimensional asphalt shingle, and an unsuccessful replacement is the 5D crimp metal. It does allow, I mean, when you see something that's less successful as opposed to
Unsuccessful.
yeah, I mean, it really goes, and even in some cases, you know, in full disclosure, my house is a 1939 bungalow. It had metal shingles when we first bought it 35 years ago, and we replaced the asphalt shingles twice, and we currently are in the probably the 10th year of a 5D crimp that was allowed before we became historic, before the districts were put in place. So I was able to do that. And the house, the bungalow starts looking more with the 5D crimp, starts looking more of the Key West.
That's what I was thinking, because I do like that look.
Yeah, the Key West look, and several houses in my neighborhood that have done that as well. So I'm kind of, you know, the cost difference for the benefit of having, you know, you look across and see the horizontal shingles. You have to kind of look twice to see whether they're metal or asphalt. But you are looking for that horizontal effect across the front of the roof, because in your particular case, you also have the lap siding. So in other words, the whole house is situated with this horizontal feel to it.
And it's certainly very different from doors or windows or, you know, things like that, but they're so much more visible, more noticeable from the street, right? Like you said, you have to look really closely, see what kind of roof it is.
And then, you know, to your point too, the economic hardship, we've had a couple of those cases over the years. And what they put, you know, people have to disclose, you know, and on some of those, we did grant it because there was still a second home. You know, and yes, they didn't have a lot of money for it, but their second home lived in New York. This is an investment property.
It is.
Obviously, and you're gonna.
As soon as I'm done, I'm gonna sell it.
Obviously, and the question I would have is, will it command that much more money when you go to sell it, being true to its historic, you know, nature?
I have no idea. I really don't know if we're going or won't. That's what the market asks.
Then the other thing is we developed the guidelines, and you know, I'm sure, you know, the very first thing they told us the guidelines.
Yeah.
We developed these over a period of time, went through a lot of work to get these guidelines done. And my only question is that, you know, the difference between successful and less as opposed to unsuccessful should be taken into consideration. And I know we don't have the, you know, you're stating that we don't have the criteria for the excessive over amount of money that it costs to put back something historic. This is gonna have to be, I guess the board's decision may not be unanimous. Like, you know, what do you all think?
I have one.
Sure.
You mentioned there were a few roofs, metal roofs that are similar. How many are in Lake Worth that need historic?
In your
What's,
neighborhood?
Well, she said in general, right? Like
you're talking about like the brands?
examples of, yes.
Yeah, so staff was able to find 4 brands that would meet wind code. There are 4 brands. I think all of the replacements for metal shingles that we've seen have chosen to use the same brand, that Barrage, that 535 South Palmway is using, but we were able to find 4 that do meet.
I was just curious because you pointed out that we would have to discuss parameters going forward. And that would open the floodgates for people to replace them. And
She wants to know how many
so I'm just curious.
examples
if
we're
that-
gonna need.
Oh, how many examples of houses with
Yes.
these? I don't know that we have the exact number.
The existing, the.
Well, yeah, just
It's
like
more
if we're
complicated.
existing, right, if we do this, then.
It's like
Five.
5.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right, 4 to 5. It's just, I mean, it's just our position is, and has been for a while on these, is that there's only 5 left.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this
Right.
is the last of this whole thing
Sure.
that was happening. So this is why what makes it a harder decision, because there's 2 kind of things that come into historic. One is, do you have a lot of examples of this? So if you tweak it, there's plenty more where this came from, so you can maybe tweak this a little bit and it's still consistent with its core. And then there's many more examples of this. It was kind of ubiquitous. And then you have this other thing where you have something that is unique and special, and that uniqueness and specialness in our code ask for a little bit harder look. And so that's the struggle with this particular issue, and has been for a while. And it's not an easy decision because of the cost difference of the roof. Like, that's real. And
Between double and 3 times the amount.
it's expensive. It's no doubt. And then, so
Well, we don't know. till we
It's
ask.
tough.
Would it be possible to get an
If
estimate?
the other, I can get an estimate, but the other, if you drive by, like I just drove by the 535 South Palmway, it doesn't look anything like
The
his
shingles themselves.
They don't, and the home with these new shingles looks totally different. I mean, it's a totally different look overall. It's much more decorative. It's not. I think the asphalt probably actually looks more like what's on that roof right now, but.
So remember, these roofs have been painted, so originally they would have been silver.
It's still silver.
And there is a small detail where the original ones, I think, would have been mostly flat.
Yeah, for the most part, there was way back when there was a greater variety in, how detailed or undetailed they could be. But yes, we are a lot more limited in the choices, and they sometimes aren't a perfect replication of what was there originally either. It's just kind of as close as we can get to being original is the modern metal shingle.
And when Annie and I, and what we talk about internally all the time, and why the design guidelines are structured where they are, where they're really quite lenient for historic preservation. Because if this was in the Northeast and we're talking about wood windows, we're not then talking about replacing wood windows with impact windows. That discussion's not on the table. That's where, you know what I mean? Like, that's not on the table. We have a different climate here. And so our rules are written to reflect our climate and our impact with her. So a lot of the things that we consider and we would do administratively in a historic district in the Northeast or in the center of the country are not things that are remotely on the table. And we have kind of adapted our guidelines for our specific climate.
Would it be possible to come back with some photos or samples of that new? Could we get pictures of
You
535?
had it on the screen.
The 535?
Well,
Well, the one, yeah.
If they put on the screen.
Actually, I got an email from them.
Wrong one.
They've had the, they've got the under.
I got an email from them. They just sent me tonight with some pictures.
You have a picture.
I see that, but I'm just saying the one on Palmway.
Yeah.
So this Victorian, the bottom right Victorian shingles, that's what they used.
You're right, Tyler.
Yes. Sorry, yes, the Victorian shingles are what 535 was using, correct.
I've got pictures here.
And I see them.
I think they're installing it right now.
So we've got to kind of be careful, sir. So we got to kind of be careful
Okay.
because you're showing one board member and that's not, yeah, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. So if you want to, maybe we can.
It's just like the one that you showed.
Right, yeah. It's just that it's not part of then the public record, like it creates it's a quasi judicial hearing, creates a big problem.
I had a quick question, real quick. I mean, this is a really interesting conversation because I mean, on the one hand, we understand we have a limited inventory of these houses. We want to protect the integrity of the historic districts and the integrity of the houses. But is there a way that you can look on the Papa website or any way to do some type of analysis of the houses that have done this and the resale values of it, the ones that have kept it? Because to me, it's a marketable thing. And if you've done a good job to, preserve the home and its original character and replace it with the more expensive fruit, I know realtors out there can sell that stuff, So I'm curious, if there's a way to find out if there are houses that have done this and what the resale value has as opposed to those who didn't. Is there, we might look at that or not?
There's an imperfect way. We'll try to find examples of what they've done. And we'll have to go back. So the way our applications are sorted is not necessarily by roof type. So we'll probably, it'll take a little bit of tweaking, we might have to drive the neighborhood for metal shingles and then.
Basically, make a motion to table so that
Yeah, but I think it's important that you guys identify really the pieces of information that you need to make your final decision, so we don't make the applicant wait, because I know this is a property that you're turning over, so. So we really identify the key pieces of information he needs to bring forward so he can get a decision on his case too as well.
Can I ask one more question? You brought up that you want to change the roof. Are you changing it because it's leaking?
It's because it's made insurable. It's.
So right
old.
now you can't carry
It's an
windstorm,
original.
so you
I
can't
don't,
carry
I
windstorm?
don't, I have it because investor insurance is easy to get, but for a homeowner that's gonna buy it, I think the roof's like 50 years old. I mean, right now, it's
Yeah, but
super
it's-
tough.
So,
It's not wrong, it is,
Exactly.
I don't think
it's
they can-
difficult
they
to
can-
It is.
insure.
Because I can't sell
I
it,
agree, right,
right?
Yeah.
You can't sell it
Okay.
unless you put it in the product.
all right. Thank you.
So I
Okay, so
heard.
you're looking for direction.
Yes, so what I heard is I heard that we want to maybe look at potential resale. We maybe have you go back, talk to your roofer and look at potentially installing the metal 5E crimp horizontally. What would that take to look at that and potentially see if that could meet wind code? Because that's something that we have discussed, because it's the issue with the 5E, the issue with the metal standing seam or the 5E crimp is the verticality of and so if it's installed in a different way, we would be interested in seeing if that could work, that's something that we've put to a couple applicants. So if you can find a roofer, you could come back with that information. And then we want to see the number left over, what we're dealing with, anything else that you guys need from us.
The price of the Victorian one.
Oh, you would get a roof quote. You were gonna get a roof quote as well.
For that.
Victorian, the
they use-
Barrett, well, whichever one
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
four.
yeah, it's good one.
So there's, and again, I was going to ask if, because it appears to me that the horizontal nature of everything, so it would probably, well, that's why it's a less successful is to go with the dimensional, three-dimensional asphalt shingle because it maintains that horizontal appearance. And that is why 5E crimp is actually the least preferable kind.
It's not the material, it's the
Change
orientation.
the orientation, so, I mean, we could, this is one of those areas. Like I said, we got 5 left or 10 left or something, if you find somebody that was purchasing a house and wanted to make sure that the house stayed true to absolute historic nature of its original architecture and construction. And they wanted to do that, then obviously you'd have a problem with that, but when you're talking twice to 3 times the cost in replacing it, and it still maintains that,
Right,
still maintains that horizontal.
and I think there's more than 5 going up.
It
But
would,
now,
you
what-
guys email, I mean, in the meantime, you can help us out. If you see one on your street, email us and then,
We had one in front of us on the 700 block of Ocean Breeze that was metal. It never came back to us.
We also had a metal shingle roof on the corner of Ninth Avenue north of Federal. It was a 2-story building with a pool in front.
Right.
And they wanted to come up with a standing seam metal roof. And we shot that down because of the horizontality, and they went down with metal shingle. Metal shingle.
If we could get some examples of the new metal shingles, like you were saying, on South Palm, and maybe there's 1 or 2 in the city, if we go back to the film. Just to see, I mean, because if we're on the street looking up, what's the difference? I mean, visually. Be nice.
And if you come back with that quote for the difference, and it probably, I don't know how everybody else would, but I mean, that makes a difference. You know, when you're looking at that kind of extra cost on. I guess we'll go ahead and table it for this time, come back next month with that.
Or do we need to make a motion on that or?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to table HRPB 23-00100084 to continue till next meeting. Whatever that means.
Motion and second, motion second, any more further discussion, all in favor, aye? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Really quick, sorry, did we need to call for public comment on this project? I know y'all just made a motion. Awesome,
I call.
perfect, okay. Let's see.
Okay, next on the agenda is HRPB project 23-00100117.
Awesome.
Window door replacement 224 and Drive.
Yes, so, yeah, this is 220 Fordham Drive. This is a non-contributing resource in College Park. So here we are. This is on the north side of Fordham Drive, just west of Federal Highway. So a quick background on this project. So we first got the application for window replacements in March. 10 days later, staff reviewed and disapproved the application, specifically because windows 1 and 2, which are the windows that are visible from the street for this property, were both proposed to have a gray tint. And window 2 was also missing horizontal muntins that would make it visually appropriate. So after that, there was a great deal of communication between staff and the applicant, mostly with Yen. He's unfortunately sick tonight, so he wasn't able to be with us. But that communication was provided in an attachment to your board packet. So after that significant communication, the property owner asked to take the project to this HRPB meeting to retain the tint on the windows and not use the requested muntins. So these are some photos that Yen put together. On the left, you can see the current, and on the right were the original windows 1 and 2. So window 1 was originally a 2-light awning window, and window 2 was originally a pair of awning windows. So the applicant's proposed windows are here, a single hung and a full light horizontal roller, both gray tinted. Staff's recommendation is obviously to do clear for both, and then for that horizontal roller, just to make it a bit more visually compatible with the original awning windows, to kind of imitate that pair a little better, have horizontal muntins applied to that roller window to create sort of a 3-light awning window look. So our design guidelines, typical windows for this masonry vernacular style, most often they did have awning windows like this property. And also in our design guidelines, tinted windows are not permitted. So staff recommends approval with conditions to bring windows 1 and 2 into compliance with the design guidelines. So when I was looking through Yen's staff report today, there were a couple errors that we want to note before any sort of discussion and motions get made. Conditions 1 through 4 on your staff report should be replaced with these 2 that are on the slide right now. There were some errors. He had mixed it up with another project he was working on. Sometimes we get lost in all of our windows that we're doing. And then the motions on this slide are correct. The ones in your staff report, I think. Yep, exactly. Because this is a non-contributing property, they can do what they want with the ones that aren't visible from the street.
Sure.
Can I get, is there a VLT of the tint that they're using?
So it is, I believe, it doesn't meet our VLTs, and we just don't allow tints, period. The glazing does have to be clear. They can use a low E coating for energy efficiency, but we do not allow inherent tint in the glazing.
But I think they agreed not to have the tint, right? That's not the issue.
No, it's both the tint and the
Oh, they do
muntins.
still want the tint? Oh.
Correct.
And we worked on that for how many years, Chip? Making it very clear.
Many a joke
Yeah.
about the.
So I won't just want you to note is because I know sometimes people just tune in, they only see the few windows here. And this belies the sheer volume of window permits we do in the city. About 98% of work in our historic district is actually done administratively. So you all see either new construction, demolitions, or you see points where the applicant and the staff don't agree on the proposed project's compliance with the design guidelines.
Question, are you finding more now that the window contractors, they say it, understand our historic guidelines more, are you getting less pushback as we are?
When we did the new guidelines, which came in before I came on board in 2020, everybody was blown away by them and has made everybody's life so much easier. So we used to, I mean, I don't know if you all know this about me, but I was a resident for 20 years and I actually served in your shoes
Right.
in another lifetime when I didn't work in the city. And
Right there.
and the volume of cases we would hear because of the design guidelines. I mean, now we literally have a photo. We're like, do this. And yeah, and the bulk of window contractors who work in the city, they work in the city with great regularity. And they just know they just propose. If they don't, they call Annie, they call Yen, they work it out, and then they get it done.
And I know I'm not supposed to ask you, but this is a non-contributing structure.
Right.
This is in College Park. We are only concerned with what we see from the street.
Right.
The applicant is replacing all the windows around the house.
Mhm.
Or when all the rest of the windows are gonna be tinted and they're gonna be without muffin. I'm just gonna guess.
Yeah.
Everything not visible from the road is not under our ordinance, is not regulated under our.
Right, but what I'm saying is that when the applicant replaces the remaining windows on the other three sides of the house. Okay, they're all gonna be tinted windows and they're all gonna be without muffins and they'll be, and they're approved administratively that way.
So they don't even get technically approved. We write our COAs in a way that we say, these are the windows that are subject to historic review. The rest are not even considered in our COA letter. So the letter will literally not even mention windows 3 through 10. Because we have no power over them, we have no
No,
review.
I understand that, but this is just for my clarity, because in effect, what you're doing is you're taking the front facade and making that different than the other three sides of the house.
We're making the
We're
part
keeping-
that's visible from the
from the road.
street consistent with the historic guidelines and the character of the neighborhood.
And this is how
I'd say it a
most,
little different than you.
well, it's how most historic districts function in the country, where the most review power is on the front. So we would prefer that all of their windows comply with our design guidelines, but
These have not been purchased and installed already.
I believe they have been purchased, they have not been installed.
They're not manufactured.
And
The applicant here? Yeah. Sure. Can you tell us that? Well, really. I'm answering my question other than that.
They've been manufacturers, so. I'm Albert Boutros, I'm the owner of 220 Fordham Drive, first time home buyer and learning a lot so far. First of all, I just want to start saying I'm born and raised Lake Worth. I've been here my entire life, and I decided to move my family a year or two after the private school back there, and
I recently found out that has nothing.
that has nothing to do with anything. I know. However, I know my house was built in 1981, and I'm learning about how historic districts work now and everything like that. Especially when I purchased the house, we had to go ahead and replace the roof right away because citizens wouldn't insure us, and we were in risk of losing the house, even though we've been looking for 2 years and we finally found something. Lucky to be here, but we ordered the windows, and I went ahead and ordered windows based off of a referral to a friend to a company called Royal Pro Aluminum Inc. And Royal Pro Aluminum in Boynton Beach.
Royal Palm would have known better.
Yeah, they're in Lake
I'd say
Worth.
that.
Right up 10, I think, yeah. So we went ahead and ordered these windows, and I based off the order based off what I saw in College Park. I know College Park is very diverse, and there's windows all shapes and sizes and all tints and colors all around us. Knowing that my house was built in 1981, it's not a traditional Spanish style home, went ahead, signed the purchase agreement, ordered all my windows. I actually never found out because I hired a contractor to install, because I don't know how to install, we have a baby, I don't have time for any of this. So contractor went in, applied for the permit process, everything, and we never heard back. We never heard back from anything about the permit approval in March. We actually just found about the permit recently, I'd say maybe April, where we actually went ahead, filled out the COA, got everything notarized again and submitted. And went through. So there's been some miscommunication.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, who would be the author of those fun emails? I read through a lot of them.
For which one?
Regarding the.
Those emails were
yeah.
mostly with the contractor
Yeah.
that were in your backup.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah. I would love to email communicate. I'm running a small business as well as new father and trying to figure life out right now. My biggest concern right now, and this is the thing, like, I want to compromise. I want to have the historic, like, view of my house. I understand that. I understand how important that is in the neighborhood now. Again, first time home, I don't know this stuff. I'm learning. However, I'm willing to do the buttons on the windows. I'm willing to make them look historic. I just physically cannot afford to replace the windows that I already purchased because they're big pieces of windows and I'm getting some crazy quotes right now. So that's the issue I'm having. Those storms that have been rolling through lately with the wind shear.
Scary, huh?
Yeah, the windows, the wind and the rain that's been rolling through lately. My son's room, the nursery room, is the one of the front facing rooms, and that's starting to leak. So is the front window. They're really old, they're really flimsy. And in College Park, we have a saying, you don't open windows apparently because you don't know if they're gonna shut. So that's why we went ahead and ordered everything. And I'm just trying to figure out how we can compromise and figure out what to proceed.
In the contractor, I'm just asking, he's not taking any responsibility for the fact that he was on with historic and, back and forth and all of that.
I have no idea. Because I ordered the windows before I hired the contractor.
Oh,
That was the thing.
all right.
I ordered the windows first because they were out like 6 months in production due to the whole shortage and everybody's trying to replace windows. And then when we finally we're going through the process, I found out my order is being processed and everything like that. I went and I found this contractor who was one of my patients at my clinic. And he was like, yeah, I'll do your windows, yada, yada. And we went through the whole process and here we are.
Okay.
And in regards to the tinting, I did some research on what your guidelines are. I know it is 60% tint. My windows are actually, and I have the order thing here, 0.59. So it's literally 1% difference.
So that's the VLT, they are
No.
still tinted.
This is the VTCO.
Yes, so that's that visible transmittance. That is a specific measurement of the light transmittance through the window that is related to tint, but it is also a separate issue from a tinted glass. So tint usually does decrease the VLT, but we do have separate regulations for no tint, no reflective, nothing like that.
0.59 EV, whatever the other thing is, then you're gonna see the difference. The tint compared to.
The glazing will look different. So it'll have the same, but it will have the same transmissive. What is the word?
Transmittance, yeah.
It's transmittance. So it will be a different color, but the amount of light going through the glass will be equivalent to our standard.
And so that's part of the reason our things specify the VLT as well as no tint.
This is front. So as you can see, it's pretty fishbowl.
Can you go back?
Yes.
All right. You know how to say? Oh, okay. Can you,
Further back.
no, stand away from it. I want to see through it, not you.
Can you stand on one like while you're doing that and
Yeah.
Whatever you guys.
Put it up on the bench. I just need it up a little higher because I'm seeing it.
Oh, seriously?
No, I want to see it from
Okay, all right.
afar.
I
Thank
can
you.
help-
That's
I can
what I
help
want to
you.
see.
It's all good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Sound
good.
I don't know, I make them go in the parking lot.
I'll go out there.
You're talking about the cost to replace just the two front windows. I mean, I know the one is
Which
big.
I got quoted already and it's about $3,500.
On top of what did you spend already, sir?
10. And that's me shopping around. I got a quote from Home Depot to redo my whole house for 30 grand, which I already paid 20 grand to move into the house because of the roof.
Right.
And my next door neighbor, I based this off of her tint. She has like a very like light blue tint that's very noticeable. And then my neighbor next to her on Fordham on the same north side of the street, I know he just put his windows up, no buttons. So that's why I was just basing my windows when.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately, we hear that a lot. and We
I know,
can't go
I
by
know.
that because, they could have done things we don't even, maybe they didn't even pull a permit, who knows, right? Then there'll be a problem when they.
Well,
try to
I know
sell
I know
it.
they pulled the permit because I have the permit numbers and their contractors that installed it. That was approved.
So I think this does bring up another point of discussion, which is sort of that slippery slope argument of we do have these guidelines. And I think kind of to Jamie's point earlier, we do need kind of a strong evidence-based decision for you all if you are choosing to go against what the regulations and the guidelines
I
are.
think we have to take them on a case by case, in my opinion.
I'd like to just interject something here. Okay. Historic structures, historic contributing structures in the districts. Everybody was putting in, low E transmissive, transmit. We allowed that because we called it clear. Okay, the community was outraged and they went to the commission and over our objection, over this board's objection, the city commission lowered the transmissivity from 70 to 60. Okay, and immediately I said, well, people are gonna come in now, they're gonna want 50, which
Right.
has happened since that rule has changed. And that was because going for low E. Low E, so they allowed low E to go a darker tint. So it seems to me like the city commission had directed all of us to follow this 60. In other words, you can have tinted windows up to 60% DLT. I'm probably wrong about that. That's what we have, but that's what I got out of it. And then, so therefore, if somebody has 59. And it's not that awful tinted. It's not like that's a really bad tinted.
So
I mean,
if you
honestly-
wanted to say that this was okay, you'd have to say that this is the functional equivalent to the standard. Is what that would, because you have to make, when you're making a determination, you have to say the why and you have to provide, and basically you have to say, why is this
Why we're making that
consistent?
determination.
Why
so
you're
we don't
making-
set a
yeah.
Precedent.
So you don't set a precedent. So.
Well, in this particular case, what I'm bringing up is the fact, number one, it's a non-contributing structure. Number two, the VLT, visual light transmission is
Equivalent.
is equivalent to what the city's commission has ordered us to accept on historic structures and contributing structures in the district. So I would say in my opinion, that if the applicant is willing to put the muntins in on the windows that he's got, it's sort of a compromise, and this is a compromise, but it doesn't mean it's precedent. It would be.
No, we're still gonna take these on a case by case.
Okay, as a staff member, I do want to let you know, we see a lot of requests for gray windows. You might need to expect to see a lot more.
Well,
I mean,
they
it's-
say gray windows, when they say gray windows, you just, because it wasn't our decision. It was the commission's decision to say that we will accept tint. They called
So
it-
that's kind of the other thing, the low E is technically, it
all
can be
depends.
kind of a, splitting hairs, but it is technically a coating versus a tint. So that I think was part of the decision, was that it's not inherent to the windows, it's a coating on the windows.
We all understood that as a board.
Yeah,
Okay, and we were told that what we decided is not what we need. to follow.
Right.
So they made us change to accept down to 60 VLT. And this applicant is coming with 59, or, we're splitting hairs here. And he's also willing to put the money in. So,
what we're trying to tell you is that if you're going to make this decision, you need to make sure that in your decision making, that it is very clear that it is only specific to this case and the express reasons why it is specific to this case, so you do not set a precedent.
And again, just like it says in your motions, you need to make sure you're putting that competent, substantial evidence on the record that supports your decision.
So if you want to do that, you guys, this is you all are choosing your own adventure. But here is the rule. And if you don't want to follow the rule, you have to provide substantial competent evidence or arguments of why this is essentially functionally equivalent or why this circumstance is unique and that you're granting relief in this matter.
In this specific situation, pertaining to this specific property.
This is why a board of residents and professionals that live within the city make a difference. In other words, they could hire like a special magistrate or something to sit up here and they would listen to that information and then just, they would say, well, no, it doesn't even know whether the law. And we're right. Okay, but we can look at this thing, discuss it and come up with different.
I'm not gonna do it. You're gonna be.
He can't make one.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But it's
Who, me?
Yeah, give it a shot.
Is it her chair?
Yeah, then you gotta add stuff at the end.
We're gonna do it, and we're gonna have
Then you just add it at the end. Well, she'll help you.
Okay.
So you're gonna do the staff recommended conditions, but you're amending the condition number. Can you pull up the condition?
One.
Just put up, so you would be amending condition number 1. Or no, are you amending both conditions to remove the word clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, so go to the motion, so go to the motion and then just, I'll help you with the condition, okay?
We're doing the first one.
Yes.
Right,
I move to approve HRPB project number 23-00100117 for certification of appropriateness COA with staff recommended conditions for the replacement.
but staff recommended conditions, but amending staff conditions
But amending staff conditions
to remove the word clear.
to remove the word clear for the replacement of windows 1 and 2 for the property located at 220 Fordham Drive. Based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the city of Lake Worth Beach land
So you
development.
can't say the staff report, because the staff report doesn't agree with that conclusion. So you have to provide your reasons as a board now. Now that this is insert your stuff now. So,
So what are we putting in? Substantial evidence,
so what is your evidence? What are you saying here is about this case?
substantial evidence of the applicant was brought forth.
and brought forth their window tinting, which is at 0.59, which is, what was the word? Equivalent,
Yeah, functionally equivalent.
There.
City commission.
what the city commission allows.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's the thing.
You have that, Sherry?
Yeah. So, and then what they're saying is, so why is this gray tint different than the next gray tint at this VLT?
Okay, well, let's do this. Let me, do I have a second on the first?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, so, this goes to the motion now we're talking about because Aaron has.
Because the Secretary of Interior Standards, which is the standard, requires clear windows in historic districts for all both contributing and non-contributing.
And the reason that we were allowing, low E with a coating on it before was that we considered it clear.
We
Okay,
made that functionally equivalent to clear. So
exactly.
now we have tinted, and now we're saying tinted's functionally equivalent to clear. So where is the line? Is this specific to the
I
circumstance?
think in this specific situation, the circumstance with the windows have already been purchased.
So
Okay,
we
Buy
do
a
get a
new
lot of
home
those as
center.
well.
You just had to put a new roof on. Little baby, yada, yada. I think in these situation, in these circumstances specific to this property, we're making our decision.
Well, they will have to compare, right? A lot of these things.
There you go.
so just, we would be prepared to, this is why you have to state why this is specific and why this is gonna be different than the next 5 people that are gonna come in. because they will come in. So we're just putting you on warning, okay?
Let's take that in, let's take what you just said. The next 5 people are gonna come in, they say that we've got a tint on our window that is 0.59 VLT.
Mhm.
And you let this applicant have his on his non-contributing structure in the front of his house.
So why is he different? That's
So
what you
therefore-
want to establish.
Therefore, you're gonna say, well, you still have to go in front of the board because it does not meet that.
But I need you to say why it's different, or are you directing the staff to amend?
No,
Here's the rub in this, is that, it's, I don't like these situations where people purchase things and we back in.
Right.
That's the bad precedent here, right? So how do we draw the line? That's the question.
This is the hard part.
Yeah.
This is
so-
the hard part.
Yeah.
I'd be a different situation if he's standing here going, look, this is my third house we're doing this year, flipping, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, he did bring it.
Yeah, well, the thing to me is like,
It can't be that you brought the baby.
The board did make somebody reorder all the windows in
Yeah.
their house.
I'm sorry,
That comment.
sure, we're in comment.
So my front door neighbor, you say you're my neighbor, is a Spanish style home that he completely redid. His name is Andy Hanberry. He has low E in his windows, clear, like what is appropriate to the guidelines in the guidelines. You take this window, you put it right next to his window, there is no difference at all.
So we're
Yeah.
kind of considering that right now
That's what,
because,
yeah.
because we're not considering that. It doesn't look tinted.
Yeah.
What we would consider tinted here.
Because when I ordered, I just ordered. I was like, yeah, can I just make sure there's
So
no
the
light?
board has already said that that's a functional equivalent, but there have to be other things. So they're working on something that doesn't really have to do with your case. It's about direction to staff and how about processing future applications.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to get from them to give us some
And I
direction.
think realistically, we have guidelines, guidelines, we're gonna stick to our guidelines. In this case specific, what this board heard at this time on this date, will be that is where we're going.
Okay. So would you like me to try to restate from what I've heard you say with particular to this? So what I think I've heard is that in this particular case, because it appears to be equivalent, it appears to be of this, the look of it is functionally equivalent to the look of the low E. Because the windows were previously purchased, this is this is a property owner homesteaded this is a homesteaded property, correct? It's a homesteaded property. And that you feel that there may be a financial component to this of creating a potential hardship for the applicant. That it's the combination of the hardship component and that the property owner is going to live and reside in the city and is not an investor, that are contributing factors to your decision to allow for the tint versus the replacement of the window.
And also too, I mean, I think that you have a family, a child, windows leaking. I mean, there's a sense of urgency here too, that there's something to be done as well. I don't know if that can factor into the consideration, health, safety and welfare.
I'm like,
Right.
Okay, so then there's also the sense of urgency.
Yeah, with hurricane season right here.
Right.
Okay,
so we have an amended motion. Does the seconder agree to the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the board. Is there any further discussion from the panel? From the public? Call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You already put the buttons in, right?
I'm gonna put the buttons in.
Okay.
How does it work with the permit process now? Like, when you-
follow up with Andrew.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you,
Good luck.
thank you,
And thank you for investing in my course.
thank you, always will.
So I think, I'm gonna do my little speech for the public and for everybody. Do not buy windows if you are in a historic district without giving us a call. We know that it's 6 months out. Just pick up the phone. You don't need a contractor. You can just have a quick conversation on the phone. We have an email. The email is on our webpage. If you go to the city's webpage, you go under business, you go to historic preservation. There's an email that says historic preservation@lakeworthbeachfl.gov. that goes to all the staff working in historic preservation. You can set up an appointment to walk through your windows. Your architecture style will walk you through what you need to look at, what the standards are. So if you want to go and get windows ordered, you can do that. And if you work with any contractors that have typically done work, they already know to give Annie and Yen a call before they get started. And so we just really encourage. And how do you know you're in a historic district? One, there's a sign on every corner, literally every corner. There's a street sign and it says the name of your street, and underneath it says historic district. So if it says historic district on your street sign, you are in a historic district. Okay. And two, you can always look it up. We have an interactive map online as well. And you can look up whether you can look up your property online just by typing in your address, and all of our contact information is in there. So please, if you're listening, please give us a call. We want to help you.
And if you are emailing to our staff, please be
Respectful.
be respectful. It's frustrating for everybody, we understand, but our staff, this is what they get paid to do. They're very, very qualified for what they do, and so they would rather go ahead and give you the okay, but they're not able to because we have guidelines.
Well, the lack of respect from this last contractor was a little rough, to be frank.
So I'm looking at
It was a little excessive and was not appreciated, because we're paid to enforce our ordinance. This is our job. You know, we don't, thank you. Thank you, Chip. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to our next. I got it right here. Hrpb project number 23-00100112, consideration COA for the construction of a new 1,800 square foot single family home and a new 693 square foot detached garage at 224 North L.
This is in the front of the school, it says, window, couldn't get out, the spiders decided to knock it down.
Oh, what is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in front, yeah, you've been in front of it.
Sorry, one sec.
We're trying to get his
Little house, we closed the fence, the whole good fire, knock it down.
Yeah, good memory.
Okay, we're good. You know, this downstairs,
Yeah, but it's locked.
is it locked? Yeah,
1999.
she has a key.
1999.
I didn't know there was, now we have. Yeah. That girl doesn't.
That's down to do, is it the same one?
Yes.
Okay.
Always on,
Sherry, could you,
I don't have it online, so I just sent it. I think it was the same one you sent earlier.
I think it was,
I think whoever's the host of the meeting needs to send it, needs to be the person to send it.
it's not, that's not it. It's a different, it's that the meeting got restarted. I think you sent an older link.
I thought we had double checked. I double checked with Sherry beforehand that this was the correct link.
Just got confused.
We tried to do that invite straight from here.
Yeah,
But
just
it
it doesn't work.
does not go to the email because I did not. default menu.
The invitation, but then we'd have to be able to email it from this computer.
So
Oh,
that's why I tried. Can you?
Yeah, I think it's good deal.
I guess,
So can you?
I don't really want to
Can you
keep,
get Outlook?
yeah.
Because it'll be
um,
my Outlook.
for Outlook.
I shouldn't-
I think so. If you logged into this, then yeah, yeah, it should be yours then. Would that be, yes, new email?
Mhm. So. You're very probably doing.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Dismiss all of your,
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes, this is all, okay. Hrpb work. Okay, B, Dan Risen at peterborn.com. We'll send this one more time and hopefully that will go through. Yeah, it doesn't go to the actual email. Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started on the presentation. And then when we get to the applicant part, we'll make sure we think we've done what we need to do to make it happen. So sorry for the delay.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is 224 North L Street, and this is a COA for new construction for a single family house and a detached garage. The existing property is contributing. So this is it here, just north of downtown on North L Street. So this does have a bit of property history. I know Bob was here for the last times. Yes, as was Chip. So the existing residence was is a 1925 wood frame vernacular building. The board had previously in 2020 considered a request for exterior alterations, but during that, some fire code issues were kind of unveiled. And then in 2021, the structure was deemed unsafe due to decay, deterioration, dilapidation, and potential to collapse. So the board was notified of the condemnation and future demolition in 2021, in June of that year. And the demolition of the existing structure has not yet taken place. We haven't gotten a permit for that demolition yet, but because it's in a local district and it has been condemned, you guys don't have to approve the demolition. So after that, at the June meeting, the Hrpb approved new construction on the property in the design that's shown here. So that development order did expire in June of 2022. We talked to the property owners in February of this year. They decided not to extend that development order for this design and instead chose to come forward with a new design. So this is just the survey and a quick aerial of the property. It is one of our 25-foot lots here in Lake Worth Beach. So it's a long and skinny lot, which does affect the design. So this is our proposed site plan. You can see the main structure with the primary entrance on the side and then kind of a courtyard in between before you get to the accessory garage. And this is the streetscape. So the property to the left, that 230 North L Street, that is also a project that the board has approved previously. It is not yet constructed, but it is in the permitting process, which is why it was included here for your reference.
That's a shipping container group. Right?
It's a non-shipping container shipping.
Non-shipping container.
Yeah. And so then here we've got the front elevation as proposed, the rear elevation as viewed from the alley and kind of as viewed from that interior courtyard. And then our side elevations of both structures. We've got our floor plans. You can see that there will be a loft space above the garage. And then our renderings kind of gives you a better sense of the whole house. So getting into the meat of this, for zoning, this does meet all of our zoning requirements. We've not noticed anything of concern. This is in a multifamily district, so they do get more FAR, more structure coverage, all of that. Getting into our guidelines for new construction. So this building is designed to staff's analysis, elements of contemporary and mid-century styles. It's compatible in height, its relationship to, other buildings spatially. They've got some site features like that breeze block wall that are very mid-century, but we do have a lot of recommendations on elements that you can see there, fenestration, roofs, facade, etc. And so we'll kind of go into more detail with that in our design guidelines. So we worked with William as well to kind of get this full design analysis because he is a registered architect, and as a professional, he has a lot of eye for detail for these kinds of things. So basically, our overall argument here is that it doesn't fully read as contemporary architecture or fully read as mid-century. It's kind of somewhere in a gray area. And so we have some suggestions that we think could help them lean stronger into that contemporary concept and be kind of a stronger, clearer design overall. So first off, when we're talking about fenestration, so they've got these single light awning and fixed glass windows. Some of the windows are pretty small, which is a bit atypical, but our biggest concern here is just the pattern of the fenestration. This was something that William was very concerned about, was basically just within each of the bays. I've kind of drafted up these red lines here to divide the house into 3 bays. The windows on the top and the bottom aren't really centered within the bays. You can see, for example, in that middle section, the top windows are beautifully centered within that bay, but the bottom, they're not centered with each other. One's kind of way off to the side, one's not. So that's kind of a more design detail concern that we have, is just kind of the spattering of windows throughout the building isn't really appropriate for mid-century or contemporary.
Is that the same for the upstairs on the right hand side? In that bottom area?
Yeah, it's not the exact same, but there are similar issues.
I mean, this one, you're basically gonna have other new construction 5 feet from it, or whatever, 10 feet, you're right next to it.
That's actually on the south side, so that's
That's the south side. Never mind.
but you'll never.
I was trying to help.
I know.
So roofs was kind of a big sticking point for us in this design. It's a lot of roofs.
Right.
So for that primary house where we've got, 2 roofs this way and 1 roof this way, we can kind of see what they're going for. There is a contemporary and mid-century style of having contrasting roofs kind of in a more horizontal plane, but it doesn't quite read the same on a longer, skinnier building. So we suggest having it be just a single slope roof, or even just changing the middle section to be flat so that it's not visually fighting with the others. The accessory garage, we think, should just be a simple flat roof or a shed roof, that angle to match the primary structure rather than a gable. And then the porch roofs, we suggest being flat instead of hipped. So I've drafted this a little bit. Yep, thought that might help. So on the left is, what is currently proposed. On the right is Abraham and I played around with Microsoft Paint and tried to just conceptualize what some of these changes could look like. So that's, the main roof without having the contrasting angle, and having that first story roof be changed to flat. We feel, especially with that porch roof, it just feels much more modern and contemporary and fits the style that they're seeming to go for much more clearly. It kind of imitates that sort of eyebrow look that we've seen with others. And then also really quick, while we're on roofs, they are proposing to use metal roofing. That's not typical for contemporary or modern styles, or mid-century modern styles. Most often they were flat roof material or asphalt shingles. So that's what we would suggest, in addition to the fact that standing seam and 5E crimp metal roofs in historic districts aren't typically allowed, at least at a staff level. Those always require board review as well. So for the facade, this is kind of a funky one as well. Staff, I'll go back to this real quick. Staff kind of feels like the current design doesn't have enough detailing to read fully as the front. We feel it kind of looks like this side of the house, facing towards the street. We would love to see the front door go on the front of the house. We know that they're kind of internal design. They would have to rework that if they wanted to do that, or at least just adding some architectural detailing, some oomph to give this kind of the power of a primary facade. And then exterior wall finish, this was another thing that William had brought up. This is more of a, if for increased visual interest, something that was very common with contemporary was to have multiple wall materials. So if they wanted to do kind of an accent wall material of brick facing, something just to, yeah, add that visual interest to the design.
On those blank pieces.
Sure, yeah. So these were also a couple that I just wanted to bring up really quick. These were ones that, again, William, thank goodness for his brilliant mind and lots of connections locally. These were a couple contemporary ones that he thought were very successful. This one on the left, you can see kind of that multiple angles of roof line. Because these both have the benefit of wider lots, it's a lot easier for them to create this kind of long, rambling, horizontal form that lots of contemporary and mid-century styles use, which we don't have here on this 25-foot lot. So that's part of the reason why those multiple roof lines kind of work better. They get to spread out versus all being right on top of each other. And this one on the right uses this really, really big pyramidal hipped roof with really deep eaves to kind of act as a primary architectural detail. It's a simpler design, lots of glazing, but reads as a very tropical contemporary. So this was just another one where they had sufficient detailing to read as contemporary, but had a little spice to it. So our recommendation is that this project gets continued. We think that it would be beneficial to give the applicants some time to revise the design with staff comments and any comments that you all may have. But if you guys decide to approve the new construction, we do have conditions of approval that we've drafted as well.
I think what y'all recommended as far as the roof line, instead of that center doing that where it's all one, that's gonna give you a lot more square footage. This seems this way. I like the one.
This is proposed, this is what is proposed, right?
Yes, this is the applicant's proposal. This is not staff's recommendations.
Can we hear from the applicant?
Yeah. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if we can get the applicant's architect on as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just hit promote to panelists. So awesome. They should be coming on as a panelist soon. Great. So if you would just unmute your mic and turn on your camera so that our secretary can swear you in to give testimony. Wonderful, thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Gary Shuffler, owner of 224 North L Street. Yeah, so I bought this house in January of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And then, we went through, as Bob comments, we went through a series of different plans for it. Originally, it was intended to, be restored and kept as a wood frame bungalow. As it turned out, it needs a whole lot of work to get it there, and really, the entire thing would need to be rebuilt. And so, through that process, we decided to do the new construction thing. So then in 2021.
Here, if I could just add a little bit more to your story, so this property was condemned by the building official, and because it's because of the state, because of the condition, and then as well as some of the work and other things that had happened to it. And then as a result, because it's a 25-foot lot where the setbacks were of the structure, there were fire code issues as well. And so that's where we got to the demolition and then the new construction. So there was a long history of this, and then there's some other safety issues for this particular property.
Yeah, thanks for that detail. So I'm an engineer by training, so I kind of think of it as, anything can be fixed. fixed with enough time and money, but yeah, ultimately, those are the issues. So yeah, so the first design that we put together, I actually did myself. I, learned a lot through the process. And, been working with the board, as much as I possibly can, and with staff as well, previously to you guys, Abraham and Jordan. Certainly, tonight we're seeking some approval to keep the project moving forward. I mean, it's been a long time now. The property's been sitting vacant. We've put a lot of money into just maintaining it and paying taxes over the years. Also it's turning into quite a nuisance as well. We have, I've had to call the sheriff a few times for complaints from my neighbors or homeless people sleeping there and, finding drug paraphernalia and all sorts of junk around that area.
When
So,
you knocking it down.
well, the thing is, I can't really knock it down because I have a mortgage on the property until I have approved plans
Okay.
and a new mortgage. So this is where I'm hoping to accelerate the process. Last year, we started working, we started a search for a new architect, and we ended up working with Bill Van Ryzen, Peter Dorn Architects. He is also my uncle, but he is under contract as well. So that's, he worked on these plans that we have in front of us today. We did a lot of research throughout the process and also found that there are not really many two-story mid-century modern homes pretty much across the country. And that's how we ended up drifting towards, the contemporary architectural design. The sectioned roof is a detail that we actually did to make it not look like a container style home, because it's going to look like one long triangle.
Yeah, people gotta realize it's a 25-foot lot, so how wide is the house?
Exactly. It's only a 15, that brings me to my next point, is that it's only a 15-foot wide home. And so if you put a 4-foot entry door or 3-foot entry door, right in front, then you're pretty much limited to what you can do with that room. And so, I mean, that really kind of messes up the functional use of the floor plan. Additionally, with that same point, there are about half a dozen homes between this property and Lucerne, which is only a block and a half, that have side entryways. And I think that we're certainly happy to continue working on the design with the staff. I think it can be improved, and, we're certainly, don't have the perfect design. It's a very iterative process. It is very challenging to start from a blank slate, with the process that the city has in place, where we have to, come back and forth and come to these meetings. So essentially what I'm asking for, is a conditional approval, where we modify the conditions to remove the requirement for a side entryway. I don't know if we've actually looked at the conditions of approval yet.
You've reviewed it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they are.
I go back, we had prior board members that would just have an issue with one walls and window spacings and.
You've heard the presentation by the city staff. Any of that, I mean, how much of that do you agree with that could be done, with the help of the architect? Did that sound, there's some of the things they said, I don't have a problem with metal roof per se. And I see, when you explain the difference between having just a long,
Right.
lean-to type of roof as opposed to having a little bit of structure on it. But I have to admit that the front doorway does look better in my opinion, rather than having just windows in front.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. What the city staff brought up, do you agree with? And could be it could be amenable, and we could come up to some sort of a compromise that everybody can live with.
Yeah, so I think the side entry or, I'd like to keep the side entry. And I'd be happy to, work to fix the detailing, make the detailing. a little
Well,
bit more.
the condition of approval didn't require the front entrance. It said the front entrance or additional detailing to emphasize that this was in
Yeah.
the front.
I mean,
So we're willing to do the detailing.
maybe a third window and center it. I don't know what's behind it.
Well, the other thing too, yeah, so,
Something really
yeah, fair enough.
Get to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we could do, different materials, like, the different facade materials definitely sounds interesting. We could highlight with some horizontal elements underneath of that roof. I mean, the roof being, the hip roof on the front facade on the left-hand side is essentially intended to drive you to the left, right? Where the entryway will be. And then the other thing I think is important to remember when looking at these elevations is that this is your eyeball in real life will never see this, because this is completely black. So everything you'll actually see is in perspective. And so the thing that the plan shows is that the PVC fence is flush with the front of the house, and on the left, there's a breeze block wall that, could be painted a nice bright color or something like that. That's inviting you into that area on the left-hand side of the house. So those are the types of things that we could refine a little bit more,
What about the flat eyebrow as opposed to the hip on the front,
the flat,
the one on the right?
I mean, yeah, so
Let me comment real quick, if you don't mind, while I'm thinking. I grew up in the Florida Panhandle, and I remember right next to Seaside, Florida. You've probably heard of that place where all the Robert Davis inherited 80 acres of virgin land. I used to drive down 30A when that was nothing there. Okay, 45 years later, and that's what I really commend you guys tackling these 25-foot lots, because what you can do on them is really amazing. The creativity you can do, what put into it, can look really stunning, especially when we look at some of the ideas they have up there and what they've done at Seaside. They've like the contemporary, the classic, Southern antebellum, and these little tiny lots. And not to dig up a sore subject, but that's the reason why I wish that we would have a little bit more height limitations here. These 25-foot lots, you can go up and get creative, and the massing can be a little bit better. For me, there's a little bit of a massing issue here on this lot because you're packing a lot in the depth of the lot. But I think that. I like what you're going for here. To me, it's just there's a little bit of tension that maybe is not just some symmetry that you might be warranted in some places. I don't want to be like the creativity Nazi here, stating to tell you what to do. But I mean, I just would study, maybe look at some of the ideas they have at the Seaside, because they have some tiny lots and some spectacular houses they've done up there. And I think they have a lot of potential here with this. They really do.
thank you.
And Jamie, I just want to add to your thought too, as well as like your review hat here. Can you pull up the review? Do you have the staff report? If you look in your staff reports, it talks about the actual review criteria for new construction. And one of the components that you're reviewing for new construction is we don't require an architectural style in the historic district. We don't require you to mimic a style that was there before, but we do require that when you do something new, that you are true to one architectural style. And I think the concern that William was expressing with this is that there's a couple things coming together where it's not necessarily a architectural style. Yeah. And so I think that is what the reaction in the staff report was from staff's perspective is that it's just not quite all one thing. And they just got to pick a thing and just do that thing and do that thing well.
I mean, we don't have an issue with your floor plan, the garage in the back and all that. It's what we see from the street, and I agree, give the style. I like the one we approved the blue. I just thought that was cool.
I know, I liked it too. I can tell you the story about it.
Yeah.
Meet her here sometime.
How could we help this go?
Well, you have to push it forward because there are an awful lot of staff recommendations.
We think we would feel like if you want us to do administrative, we can do administrative. But we would need for them to pick an architectural style today. And commit to that architectural style and commit to working with staff to achieve that architectural style. And that would not come back to you. If there was a disagreement on that architectural style, you would be back before you. It's difficult for us to do this kind of thing because you have the review authority. So you would essentially be ceding your authority to staff in this manner. And you would be saying, hey, we like the shed roof,
Okay,
but you need to make it more contemporary.
we're giving you authority to pick a style going forward. Does that still have to come back in front of it?
If they change the style from anything other than, like, basically, we're starting with the shed roof in the front. If they're doing anything other than contemporary with that shed roof in the front, they really need to come back to you. Now we can deal with the part of why we have so many conditions is we can deal with the flat roof versus the hip roof in the front. There was, and some other things, and the window spacing, and those are things we can work out. If you're generally comfortable with the style of windows, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think just with that, if there are any conditions that you're reading that you feel strongly that they should be changed, speak now so that they don't become binding. Like Chip, I know you mentioned you maybe would want to change number 9 or see if the group wanted to change number 9 if you felt very strongly about allowing a metal roof here. So anything like that,
Then it
speak
comes
now,
down to
please.
picking a style.
I go an awful lot by what, in other words, when you tell me that the 5 metal roofs are not part of a contemporary structure. That's why they go contemporary.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, anything that you felt strongly about that are in the conditions, that anything you wanted to be changed before, you know, staff starts building a slight redesign with the applicant off of these conditions. You know, if there's anything you do want to change, let us know so that we can get that written in.
Also, some of your uncles zoomed in. I mean, if you have any comments on this, and was he listening to what the staff recommended from the very beginning?
Well, let's just turn it over to him right now.
That's the right line. Can you hear him?
Can you hear us?
Bill, Mr. Architect?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, awesome. So our board chair was just inviting if you had any comments or things to share.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mentioned it's been a pleasure working with this group. I have a lot of experience with the HPC up here in Jersey, where our main office is. I spent 9 years on a board, so I kind of know what it's like. But it really is important to have someone local who really understands the local architecture and appreciate their comments. And I think my only response to their comments is that I think most of the design sort of appearance issues that they're talking about on the outside are really kind of a result of the function of the plan. You've all realized and I think recognized what a difficult site it is to work with because it's so narrow. And when when talking about that front room, it was important for Garrett to have a room there from day one. And we explored several options where we tried to put the door facing the street, but you have to create a corridor through the house and you just lose that room. And I think if you look at the plan closely, I think most of you will agree that the plan really works really well. And with regards to the roof and the windows, I think that I really feel it's the same answer. They were both the roof and the window design were really a result of functional needs inside the building. The elevation that they showed with the center roof sloping towards you with the tall windows, that's right where the staircase is. And it's a beautiful thing. You have a nice high roof that allows direct sunlight in from the south side, right where you want it at the staircase. And it also, at the same time, the low side provides smaller windows. And on that side of the floor plan, that's where the bathrooms are, where you want smaller windows. And then if you look at the bedrooms, the roof is sloping the opposite direction for similar reasons. But in a bedroom, you don't want it aimed directly at the sun. What you would rather have is natural light from the north side of the building. So I think that that combined with what Garrett said about this long, narrow building sort of just looking like a container box, which, I get the sense that the HPC reviewers kind of like that look. And, I'm not sure if I agree or disagree, but maybe that's what they're striving for. It'll be kind of stark, which will give it even a sharper imagery of the style we're going for, which I could see how they would think that. But on the other hand, having it broken into pieces creates some interest, in my opinion, and it breaks down the mass of the building. I think breaking down the mass of the building is a good idea in an area like this because the buildings are of smaller masses, and having a long, skinny building might look out of place, but it would only look out of place from the side. So, with all that said, I don't want to sound like I'm disagreeing or don't want to work with them, because I think their comment about the entryway where they said to make that roof flat, that's right over the front door. And we actually had it that way originally, but we just needed to put a little pitch on it to get water off it. I mean, you can't make it absolutely flat, but certainly making it flatter in the little sketch that they made, I agree, it does sharpen up the style a little bit. So I'm happy, and I think Garrett's happy to work with this group. Garrett's been working with them for a long time now. And as I said, I'm not opposed to making adjustments and adding further detail. And I want to apologize because that front elevation you're showing is actually, I think I sent Garrett so many versions of this. He might have he sent the earlier one where there's a little computer glitch underneath the roof there. But other than that, I think, yeah, see that line? There's like a white line underneath that pitched roof right there. That's not supposed to be there. That's supposed to just all be stucco.
Oh, no,
So,
we knew that. Don't worry.
yeah, I figured you guys, your guidelines are so amazing with all those Revit drawings. I figured you would know that by looking at this. So yeah, that.
On the chair, what architectural style would you see the structure on the left? What would you call that?
I feel like that. It feels like a mid-century modern without trying to be an exact mid-century modern. And honestly, that's kind of that's one of the things that we kind of pitch up here, where you don't want to actually replicate. And I can see that your group is very dedicated to replications, that I wasn't prepared for that, where you want it to look exactly like a mid-century modern, like it was built in 1950. In fact, I've encountered other HPC organizations where they want you to pick a style, but they don't want you to do it exact because they don't want to trick people into thinking that this really was built in 1950. They want it to be alive today. So I don't mind having a little mix of things, but that's just my opinion. And I respect the opinion of your group and happy to, make adjustments as long as Garrett's happy with it. And I think if we were going to make an adjustment to that middle section, I would opt for the flat roof only because I would want to have as big as windows as possible along that staircase.
So that would tend to take the architectural more to a contemporary style.
I think that what they have, it's really yielding contemporary more, because I mean, honestly, when we look at this, even on the left, we don't see mid-century modern at all. We really see contemporary. And I think if we're going to do contemporary, I mean, let's do contemporary, let's lean into it. And that's the thing, is that, our ordinance is set up to really have architecture be true to architectural styles, and that's an easier standard for boards to review. There's less ambiguity. Otherwise, we end up being the pretty committee, right, which is not legal. And so we need to make the standard, is it true to the architectural style or not? Not is it pretty or not? And so that's why the standard is established the way that it is. So we can work with them on leaning into the contemporary. We are going to need them to tweak some of the windows on the sides. We understand that window design and placement is indicative, but there are things that they can do to make that.
And you're more than willing to work.
So you're open to tweak.
They need to probably tweak more than we're gonna tweak, but yes, we're open to some flexibility on the sides. But it can't be so off center. It has to, there's a way where you can do some off center or do things to balance in a certain way where you're still, maybe it's not perfect for interior furniture layout, but it's a little better for the exterior and the experience of the district.
Well,
And-
this is somewhere I disagree a little bit because like these are lots that are packed in that you can't even see the side of you would never see the side of some of these elevations unless you'd like go into my neighbor's backyard and look straight up at it.
Right, but we're talking about taking this to staff review only, and you're not coming back to the board. So why don't we work with them? If we get to a point where we agree to disagree, we'll kick them back to the board. So you can approve, subject to staff's approval with the conditions. But if it's not to staff conditions, to be quite frank, we're not really comfortable doing this because we're gonna make it through the architecture. We understand the windows aren't gonna be necessarily absolute perfection at every time, but it needs to be better than what is being shown. We're not gonna approve what's shown. So we're gonna ask for more. So if you're asking us to do it, I'm telling you what we're gonna ask for. If you wanna see it again, then that goes back to the board and that's it, you know.
Basically, if we approve it, it's approved with the condition, then you guys are gonna work together.
Mhm.
All of it.
I just don't want there to be any confusion of what our expectations are, so.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
if we disagree, then we're just gonna come back.
I think that's a good place to be, you know, and we're gonna try to get you to an administrator, like, we love you guys, you know that. But we don't love just bringing stuff here, you know, like, it's a lot of work for us to bring something here.
It needs to be like, but after we heard the architect talk a little about the lighting and the thought behind it, I'm a little more comfortable now doing that. I think that's a zone of agreement you're at. So I think that's safe to do that.
So I
I
think,
mean, if you're gonna embrace contemporary, there needs to be something in this blank space.
There's some materials like
Yeah.
horizontal material or a corner detail or
even a stucco scoring,
Right.
a horizontal stucco scoring there, or something, you
A
know.
lot of these things that they're talking about are not
Major.
major things. It's just, you know, when at the very beginning of the presentation, when they broke up the building into thirds, and they talked about the window spacing. I mean, obviously, there's some thought into where those windows are going based on the floor plan. But if that can, you know, and like you said, I agree with them too. You know, if it's where a corner lot, it'd be a lot different.
Yeah, you're from me to you is the other house.
Yeah, so, right, so some of this, I wouldn't be hard on the window placement on the side. I understand Williams' thought process. But again, he's not on the corner.
Right, but you're giving this to us to review. So
Right.
we're going to review it consistent. We will do our best. If we get to a point where we disagree, it will come back to you because that's what your role is.
When you finish this, when you finish with your review and approval process, this is going to be a non-contributing structure for the historic district. And we are really going to be looking at what facade, what we see in the front.
So the
All right.
point though of the architectural review is that we would like to see these eventually be historic. And so we would like them to be them examples of architecture that's significant enough that could then be designated in 50 to 60 years. So we want something, so just because it's not contributing doesn't mean like, hey, whatever, let's just throw some lipstick on this pig and like, let's hit the road. You know what I mean? Like, we want it to be consistent with the architectural, so I did not mean that this way.
Also every.
But I mean, you get my point.
But other examples they show of contemporary architecture aren't necessarily all symmetrical. at the same time.
I don't think it has to be perfectly symmetrical, but it needs to be more than what this
And
is.
it-
So we're gonna ask for more. So if we get,
Please just
yeah,
consider also what we approved next to the structure, next to the property. So, you know, be a little lenient if you can, be a little understanding.
we will do what we can administratively. Otherwise, it will come back to you all to make the final
And
decision.
there's been other approvals for side entryways on 25 foot.
I think they're good with the side entryway. So we've taken our note with the side entryway.
Okay, can I hear a motion?
I move to approve HRPB project number 23-00100112 with staff recommended conditions for construction of a new single-family house and detached garage at 224 North L Street based upon competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
Does that work for you? Does that work for? As a
Yeah.
motion?
I don't think so. I don't know the exact terminology of the.
In other words, you guys are gonna work it out.
Work it out.
You're gonna work it out.
And if you agree to it, we're good with it,
Okay.
based on what we're seeing and what we.
And look, I mean, we have worked with Garrett for years. We're good with him. He's cool to work with.
Okay,
We're gonna have an open, honest conversation. And just some of why I'm so direct is because I don't want people to misinterpret what we're saying or lead them down a path. This is a lot of money that's
Yes.
happening. And it's better in my mind to be clear. And then to have people have expectations where they're putting money into that expectation.
okay. We have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further comment from the board? Public? All in favor,
Aye.
aye? Any opposed? That's unanimous. So thank you very much.
Let's get the slot filled in.
Good seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel.
Okay. So our last physical project for the night,
That's 23-00100078.
that is,
That's South Palmway.
let's see.
My neighbor.
All right, so as our chair said, this is 711 South Palmway. This is consideration of a COA for demolition of the existing structure and construction of a new single-family house. This is in our single-family residential zoning district, and the property is currently a non-contributing resource in the South Palm Park Historic District. So here's our location map. We are just north of 8th Avenue South on South Palmway. And so we've got actually a really interesting property history here. So this existing single family ranch style house was built in 1956. The architect of this house was Agnes Ballard. So she's significant because she was Florida's first female registered architect. And she was the 6th woman to ever be admitted into the American Institute of Architects. So really awesome that we have her, having some local designs here. The original house was an L shape with stucco, concrete tile roofing, and some architectural detailing, including ornamental gable vents and some decorative porch and carport columns. It has had alterations over time. A pool and screen enclosure were added to the back in 1959, another patio in 1964, some accessory buildings. The concrete tile roofing was switched out for asphalt in 1988. And we have less documentation of this, but sometime between 1960 and 2007, the open front porch was enclosed with screening and the carport was enclosed to become a garage. So this property, like I said, is currently non-contributing in our South Palm Park district, but it was recommended to be given contributing status in the updated 2020 Historic Resources Survey. So if that were to be adopted, this would become a contributing resource. So our current lot, we've still got that house there. You can see the pool and we've got this survey. So this is a 100-foot wide lot. So part of the applicant's plans, should this demolition be approved, would be to split the lot into two, build the new construction that we're discussing tonight on the north half of the lot, and then eventually at some point also build another single family house on the south half. So starting with our demolition request, since that's kind of, we've got two hurdles tonight. Can it be demolished? And then do we approve the new construction if you do approve the demolition? So our full responses, our full analysis are in your staff report, but we'll just go over some of the main points for the decision-making criteria kind of verbally tonight. So they do propose demolition and simultaneous new construction, which is much preferable for us in historic districts, so we don't have empty lots sitting. So immediate reuse would just be on that north half. The other half of the site would hopefully at some point also get a single family house. The applicant has not submitted any evidence that the existing structure can't provide a reasonable economic return as it currently exists, nor have they submitted any evidence that, structural engineering wise, it is unsafe or cannot be repaired. The building also has not been inspected or condemned by the city's building official. So staff don't believe that this is, likely to qualify as an individual structure on the National Register, but like we said, it has been recommended to become contributing. And that updated designation reflects both the age, because now it does fall into our basic 50-year threshold, as well as kind of a increased appreciation for preserving structures of this post-World War II building boom. And this was kind of a part of that, especially in this district. So the South Palm Park District was developed as one of the city's first speculative land neighborhoods, and it continued to develop through all of our periods here. So the Florida land boom, the Great Depression, World War II, and the post-war era all have architecture reflected in this neighborhood, which is part of what their historic district designation really denotes as being so unique about this, that you get to see every era of development in this one district. So it's a ranch building. I know that can be hard for people to care about and love sometimes. There are lots of remaining examples of ranch architecture in the city, but in this case, this is one of few surviving examples of Agnes Ballard's design. So like I said, first female registered architect in Florida. Doing some research on it, a 2016 Palm Beach Post article talked about, at that time, only one other known example of her architecture survived.
Is that Bob trying to get back
I
in?
think it's a smoker.
Should we give it a second? Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, like I was saying, that 2016 article, at the time, they only knew of one surviving example of her architecture, which was also a ranch house up in the Old Northwood district in West Palm. Since then, two more of her designs have been kind of discovered or recognized for her design. One of them was in West Palm and one of them was on the north end of Palm Beach. But again, that only brings us up to 4, including this one. So she did a lot of architecture at the time, not a lot has survived to be with us today. So staff does believe that retaining this structure in the district exemplifies the development history of the city and provides a unique opportunity to study local architecture, especially local female designed architecture. So that's hurdle number 1, that's demolition. Now we're gonna shift gears into the new construction that's been proposed.
So if you approve demolition, then this is part 2.
Yeah.
And isn't there gonna be 3 parts? Isn't there gonna be a recommendation to split the property? Or we have no control of that?
No, the property is 2 platted lots of record. So it's 2 50-foot lots. So this is that they have one parcel, and a parcel is a construct of the property appraiser for taxing purposes. So they have one parcel. In order to split the parcel, they cannot split the parcel beyond the platted subdivided lots of record.
And so they've previously gotten a zoning letter from staff that basically said this could be feasible for you to split the lots if you get demolition approval. But that would not be something that they'd have to get approval from the board to do. So Here we've got our site plan. You can see, one half has the proposed new structure. So here we've got our streetscape, and I also included the photos of the neighboring structures down there, just for kind of additional reference. You can see this is a bit taller than the rest, and we'll get kind of more into that in a little bit. But first, let's move through. So here's the proposed front and rear elevations and our side elevations. We've got our floor plans here. You can see they're doing something that a lot of our designs do, where they step back that second story to meet side setback requirements. And then here we've got some renderings. That's the front on the left, the rear on the right, and on the bottom is one of these side elevations. So just like the last one, they're consistent with all requirements in the zoning code. We don't anticipate any zoning issues based on what's been provided to us so far. The building is designed with elements of the wood frame vernacular style, a little bit of a sort of contemporary iteration of the wood frame vernacular, but it is compatible in terms.
I just want to talk a
Sure.
little before she goes on to the architecture. I just want to let you guys don't approve the site plan. So we put together the zoning analysis table to the best of our ability based on the preliminary construction or architectural plans that we have. When they come in for permit, we will do the final zoning review at that time based on those final construction documents.
Should we not stop here at this point and discuss the demolition and
Well, let's get through the whole thing.
the
I mean, and unless you guys want to stop, do you want to stop and talk about the demolition first before we go on? Because that's a decision. I mean, it's a go, no go decision.
You've given us a lot of information.
Yeah.
About the significance of the architect, the history of the building, the fact that it was going to be on, it will be on the next survey. It will be a contributing structure.
So it is already on the most current survey, it was already identified to be contributing. That survey was not adopted. And what we've been doing is on a case by case basis of people have wanted to opt into the district, but we haven't gone forward with direction from the city commission to move forward and implement and formally adopt the new survey. We've been doing it by attrition, and we've gotten a lot of people to opt into the district because of the FEMA floodplain requirements and some other things. So we've gotten a lot of voluntary compliance, but for this one, they want to demolish it. But it would be, if the survey that was done was adopted, this would be contributing.
One of the criteria that we would normally take a look at is if the structure had been changed throughout time, it may get less contributing. It retains much of the character of its architectural design, and hasn't been modified. So I mean, it does still reflect a particular, is it ranch? I mean, it's a ranch style.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of anything else we call it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a ranch style. And I think something that was important when the architectural historians went out for that most recent survey is, some of the changes to the front, like enclosing that front porch with screening. Something that's really important for historic is reversibility of changes, and something like that is very easily reversible. You've still got, you can see those decorative porch columns and things like that. So, should someone want to fully bring this back to the original design, that's something that they would easily be able to do, just take off the screening of the front porch, that sort of thing.
Does staff have a recommendation one way or the other on demolition?
We recommend denial of the demolition request.
You want to hear from the applicant now?
Just on the demolition, if we're gonna,
If you're gonna consider them separately, you would want to hear from them.
We have to separately, right? Because.
You want to hear what more of the proposed architecture?
No, I want to hear do the demolition right now.
Yeah, just one way or the other.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me just make sure. I know this applicant also had someone who was going to try to go on by Zoom. I'm gonna make sure I haven't gotten any emails of similar issues as the last applicant had. So that's why I'm pulling up my computer.
So, hi, my name is Boutros Bernard, the architect, and I'm here with my partner for the company, Badi Jahari. Thank you, member and staff of the board, for taking the time out to hear this project. And since we're, I guess, breaking it down into two phases, I guess we'll start with the current property at hand, right? So just to kind of summarize a little bit of what's in the staff report and some of our due diligence, just to run through this, as currently built, it is not in the same condition as it was originally constructed. As stated, it has gone through 7 renovations, alterations, or additions to this property. It is a non-contributing resource to the historic district. It is unlikely to qualify as an individual landmark. And there are many other examples of ranch architecture within the city as it dominated American housing from the 1950s to the 1970s. To study this house as is would be an inappropriate depiction of history, as it's gone through many changes. There are better untouched examples of ranch styles instead of this hybridized version. So that's just to talk about the existing structure. And we would like to do 2 parts, but I guess since we cut it in half, I'll let Fadia touch on this a little bit more.
Hi, so first of all, I want to thank staff for really wanting to memorialize women in this architecture field because it is a heavily men dominated field. So thank you guys for that. But with that being said, if we're trying to memorialize women architect in the field to empower and encourage more women in architecture, it cannot simultaneously prevent the career progression of current women architects in the field, because I feel like that would totally just go against the initial intent of, you know, women driving this men dominated field. So we're happy to work with the board to find, you know, that sweet spot where we do both honor the past women, empower the current women, and pave the path for the future women. One of the conditions for approval is, I know we're breaking it up, but I just want to touch about at this point on one of the conditions for an approval is to completely document the existing home. And it would be, you know, my honor to personally document the structure in its entirety with all the latest tools we currently have available, from, you know, drawings, sketches, physical models, even digital models, to really capture what the structure used to be as, you know, she intended it. Out of just the 17 conditions for approval that the staff recommended, we agreed with all of them. If you guys were to approve demolition, except for one of them that we can talk about later, but it's 17 conditions from approval, and we're okay with 16. So we're meeting halfway, more than halfway, I would say. And we really think that denying this project is, you know, denying the continuous progression of women in architecture and the impact women architects have in the built environment of Lake Worth. So today, we ask of the board members to act more of a stepping stone for all women architects in the city, as opposed to maybe another obstacle that we and other women will be once again faced to overcome. So thank you guys so much. And I get it, it's a tough decision.
That's a lot of things.
Yeah, I get it. Trust me.
So the process, we've got this question with the staff, the process here is that we can make a decision about the demolition, correct? And then that's appealable to the commission, right? If that's, we make a decision, it's appealable to the city commission, correct?
Correct. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you vote to deny demolition and then obviously inherently deny the new construction as well, they can appeal to the commission. They would have to find that your decision was arbitrary and capricious. It would not be a second version of this. It would just be, was the board's decision defensible? Was it arbitrary? Was it capricious? That's it.
I have a question. How long has when the current owner bought this property, when was that? Like, how long has it been? You know, I know it's been quite a few years, right?
Yeah, we could
Mhm.
check on the property appraiser. But yeah, it's been quite a while.
I mean, I'm thinking of the situation with the Havana Hideout, remember when we kind of were going back and forth demolishing, and one of our rationales was it was sitting there so long doing
So,
nothing. I know it's
yeah,
not the same.
It's not the same because
I know.
that was basically in a state where it was a shell.
Yeah.
And this is not,
Okay.
so,
I believe it's being actively rented right now.
So
so
there's
let's
somebody
see.
living there now.
Yes.
Oh,
They purchased it in 2000.
2000. 2000? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's been rented maybe since then, maybe, or?
I'm not sure of the entire rental history. We received a phone call from the renter when the yard sign went up.
look, we understand there's a lot of demand right now for housing. This is a pretty neat investment opportunity, right? Tear down a house, get 2 lots, build 2 houses.
Actually, can I like interject a little bit? The history of this house, the story of this, my client who owns the property, he is an elder gentleman who lives in Lake Worth. And the idea for this project is to make it financially feasible. He's actually giving it to his children who are moving to live with their family in Lake Worth that will occupy both parcels to be caretaker to him. So it would be him and 2 of his children that will now live in Lake Worth. It is not as an investment property.
So it just, regardless, it doesn't meet our standards and for demolition, which is why we have the staff recommendation. And we feel Agnes Fowler was an important architect in the area. She was she was the first female architect in the entire state. So historic preservation is not only the significance of the structure, but is there a significant story or a significant contributor tied with that structure? And so, there have been cases where we've been like, we don't really know, This is not the case with the structure. Our recommendation
Is
is,
the same architect that designed the addition on one of the properties of.
First Avenue South.
First Avenue. That was a big thing about the person. It was a flat roof addition. And
I don't
I
know.
was told that she was the first.
Might have been the same way.
Oh, yeah, that was Agnes Ballard as well. But that was an addition that was in poor shape. That was a difference. This is an entire, this is a structure that she specifically designed from. So that was, yes, it was, that was Agnes Ballard as well. Now that I know.
Okay.
Look, I just want to cut the chase. I agree with staff on this one completely. I don't know what else we need to put in behind that. I mean, it's just, I agree with the staff on this one. Period.
It is a very unique property being 100 foot. I mean, in our neighborhood, you don't see an awful lot of 100-foot lots. And there are a few, and we've scattered them around 50, 75s and 100. But kind of that is significant. We did break up one on the water not too long ago, and we're kind of paying the price for that now because the guy, kind of screwed us on it.
Yeah. 3D.
He backed out in. He backed out on it. And now we have a dilapidated structure, half of a structure sitting there. So, if I saw some significant issues with the structure, you said something about it's a hybrid because it's been added onto it. I mean, can you detail what you think makes it a hybrid? Judging by what we see.
Yeah, so staff kind of outlined some of like the 7 major renovations that the property had itself. One from the additions to the back. One, I mean, the most concerning is the screening portion in the front, the closing of the garage, changing of the roof tile. And there's a couple of it. The 2 accessory structures in the back. I mean, there's been like 7 alterations, right? And then there's a few of them that we don't even know if it's actually permitted or not, right? To go into this and then revert it back. And right now it's being used as maybe like an unpermitted portion of the structure. Now, I don't know if the owner would even want to revert it back to what it originally was, right? Because that would have to be a voluntary thing, one, to do that, and to two, to voluntarily actually make it become part of a historically,
Well, no.
Contributing structure,
No,
right?
he would not be required to do anything unless.
he wouldn't be
No,
required.
he's
That's
not
why.
required.
So,
He can leave it just like it is, rent it out.
And still subdivide the lot and build on the empty.
No.
No, because
Could do that,
all
because
of
it's right in the middle.
The house
Yeah.
occupies.
Is there,
I was locked outside for a few minutes.
okay, that's not right.
my gosh.
Is there a way, if the goal is, you, as you said, the owner to live there and have his children live there and take care of him, right? Is there a way to utilize that existing house and renovate it within the standards and?
So
make
that was
same
something we
thing
actually,
happen?
yeah, we discussed that with the applicant in our first meeting. I can't even remember when it was, a long time ago. We discussed that when they first brought this demolition and new construction request to staff pre this application even. At the time, they indicated they were not interested in that path, but if the board denies demolition, maybe they would become interested in that. I don't know, but we did discuss it with
Yeah,
them.
because you know, the 38 Cornell Drive when we did it with that demolition, you know, there's all these, you know, they had to pretty much distinguish every possible scenario before it came back and we actually decided that demolition, and they did, and it was extraordinary rules to make that determination.
That was a lot of engineering work on that one and then, and as well, and then they're still retaining a part of the structure based on, they're going to reconstruct it. Exactly as it was. And they're going to actually retain that front entry porch as well, as a result of your decision there.
Because
So,
we also don't have any plans for the second lot, right? We only have plans for the one, so if the second lot is gonna be empty for what, I don't know, I mean, that could be years.
right, so I do want to talk about though additions and Annie is gonna fill in for me because she's the expert in this area. But when you do addition, because you have an accessory structure, it doesn't impact the historic validity of the principal structure. Those are a separate structure. Secondly, when we do additions, you can do additions to a historic home and the historic home is still contributing, but there's the way that you do them. And you guys have seen additions. We approve additions all the time. And so say those words that you said.
Yes, yeah, like Aaron said, we do additions all the time. You know, especially if it's visible from the street, we might bring it to you all, or if we can't come to a consensus between staff and an applicant. But we do those administratively even. Really what we're looking for is to mesh with the design and the architecture of the existing structure while differentiating itself. So not tricking people into thinking this was Agnes Ballard's original design, clearly showing, hey, this was an addition on later, but it fits with the architecture of it. So that's kind of our approach to additions, and it's basically the standard approach to additions in historic districts, kind of nationwide, you know, not stopping progression, but making it fit and making it evident that this was an addition.
And reversibility as well. So, and so that's the other thing is, can this be reversed? And you've seen some of, I don't know, what was that house where it came in, it had an addition, it was clearly an addition. They removed the addition and they did a new addition. And it was clear that that addition was a later addition and had been, you know, properly added. When they tore that off and did a new addition to replace the old addition, it was easy to see where the line was of the historic structure and then the additional structure.
I do want to say that this addition idea would be great, except for that it's two families that would be living in this lot. So you can't have a single family home with two families if it were to be an addition. It would be, I don't even think allowed to code to have two families exist in this single family home. Plus, it would be a monstrosity of a house to make it so large to fit two families, which is the two kids of the owner. They have their own family. So which is the idea was to divide the lot and have two single family homes on the lot. So the idea of addition would be a possibility, but not in this case for the owner. At least.
Not to mention that those kids also split the cost of the entire lot, right? So one pays for half, the other pays for the other. So that makes it more financially feasible, right?
Well, we gotta get past the demolition part. Anybody wanna And the motion,
Yes, if I have to look at the language, I'll,
Yeah, let me just skip to, there we go.
It's the top one.
I move, make a motion, I move to disapprove, Hrpb project number 23-0010078 for certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the existing structure, construction of a new, 3,960 square foot, single family house at 711 South Palm Way. Proposed applicant is not established by competent technical evidence of the application, complies with the city of Lakewood land development regulation and the board preservation requirements.
okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, okay, comments on the board? You had something else you'd like to?
I do want to say that the structural integrity, although there has not been any structural analysis of it, initial walkthrough when we just started this project, could deem that if they hold on to this property for much longer, it will be end up where it's like unsalvageable, like financially feasible to.
Bring that back, and because that's what we didn't hear any of that evidence.
But we also have a demolition by neglect ordinance as well. So if the property is intentionally neglected to get it to the point where it has to be condemned, there is an ordinance and an enforcement mechanism as that. So if nothing is done to maintain the property, sure, it could possibly come into a state where it's no longer structurally sound, or if it is currently no longer structurally sound, but if it is intentionally done.
Can I just say one last thing? Documenting of the structure would be far superior than maintaining a structure that nobody could access except for the owner himself. If we get the chance to document it and give physical models, digital models now with, like, you can put on goggles and literally walk through the space, that we could provide that technology. That the impact of having this house could be studied by students, by many more people. I just feel like it's much more empowering to have this as a case study that you can walk through, see drawings, physical models, digital models, than a house that will only be accessed by the owner. If this house ends up staying in this condition or reverted back to its original condition, I just feel like there's so much more that can be done to maintain this legacy of, a woman architect. And I say it as a woman architect in the field, like there's so much more that can be done than just retain a structure that doesn't even depict her vision of the project. We could give you guys the depiction of her project if we do our thorough research and
That would be-
bring it back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there-
If you want to bring it back, you can definitely do that, right?
It is in a condition of the staff, that if it is approved, that we do that, and we want to go above and beyond what staff has recommended that we do.
If that's our standard of review, that we can demolish any historic home if we just document it. Excuse me. It has been identified as contributing, even though that survey is not adopted. And if that is our standard in the district, then the result of all future decisions is that therefore we can demolish any structure, any contributing structure, or any non-contributing structure regardless, as long as we document it in 3D
That's
imagery.
what I'm saying.
And that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, if you have-
It's not contributing today.
So I think we have a motion on the floor, so.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because I think that what's going on here is that, look, we understand all this going on, we all do, and we sit as a board, we have to make decisions, we're here at the pleasure of the commission, and we interact with our fellow neighbors, and we talk a lot about historic preservation. This town takes it very, very seriously, and we make these evidence-based decisions like we've been talking about all night. And, we're held accountable. I know when I go back to my neighborhood and go back, hang out and see people in restaurants, they hold us to these decisions we made. And it's incumbent upon us to maintain the integrity of the ordinances we have, the decisions we make, and that there's some actual, tangible consistency on how we approach these things. And so we say evidence-based decision-making, you have to look at the ordinance and you have to satisfy those things. And what we've seen has not met that requirement yet for demolition. That's what we're voting on tonight. And that's the way I kind of see this. Now, there might be other issues that you can address down the road that I don't know about. That's not before us right now, but we don't have it in front of us right now. So
It's not the time the time is over. We're at the motion.
that's just my comment about that.
This is for.
I think that's
And again, this is my neighborhood. I've had several people call me and say, did you see the sign demolition of that property? And I said, yeah, so I'm here to hear it. And I was, you know, I actually thought it was gonna go a different way, but I just don't see it, you know, I can't see demolishing it at this particular point, especially, I did not even know the architect, you know, the architectural significance of it.
So Chip, we got a motion.
I would like to, you know, go ahead and call the question, those in favor, aye? Those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. You know, sorry about that, but,
Really quick, so sorry, we do have a public comment that was submitted for this.
okay.
Sherry, did you get the chance to print that out, or would you like me to pull it up? Oh. Sherry, if you can pull that up, great.
So Sherry, do you recall if the public comments was for or against the?
I read it, it was, here, I can pull it up on my laptop, which does in fact have Adobe, unlike these ones. It was against board review of demolition of non-contributing structures.
It was against, so it was against the demolition.
It just said the board should not have the authority to review demolitions.
Of non-contributing structures, so.
We're in a historic district, so.
So here we go, I've got it up. Okay. Historic Resources Preservation Board. We live at 731 South Lakeside Drive and would like to voice our support for this project. 711 South Palmway, HRPB project number 23-00100-78. Our neighborhood is in desperate need of revitalization and redevelopment. Any redevelopment of non-contributing resources should be fast-tracked for approval without delay with little to no input from the board unless it is a contributing home or resource. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions or need additional information from us, please do not hesitate to reach out. Clark Stevens and Caroline McLaughlin, homeowners, 731 South Lakeside Drive.
If you all would please, because we've had public comment after your vote and it's contrary to your vote. So if you will just comment on the public comment, whether that changes your vote or not.
That was the reason that I thought that they were gonna go the other way. It's sort of because non-contributing, you know, what, and, the evidence that I think that.
Can I also say that we've been, no,
Does not affect my vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Let's see. Aaron, it is your turn.
On to the ordinance 2023-10. Consideration of an ordinance amending city's comprehensive plan to adopt new property.
I have to
rights
read.
element.
I have to read
sorry,
the
Chip.
caption anyway.
How exciting.
You know, this is what I look for.
There you go.
This is ordinance number 2023-10 of the city of Lakewood Beach, Florida, amending the city's comprehensive plan, adding a new property rights element as required by Florida statute 163.31776I, providing that conflicting ordinances are repealed, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
Sorry, pulled up the wrong.
So no worries. This is short and sweet. Florida legislature adopted basically a new law that said we have to have this element. And the 4 policies in the element are the required policies that the Florida legislature has laid out and have to be in the element. We did throw in one at the end that said, hey, we should also maybe not just think about property rights, but we should also think about the rights of the people in the area as well, which are all property rights, and the rights to people who participate in this process are all established rights. There's nothing new. This is not changed law. It does not grant additional rights. It does not really do much of anything except reiterate what is established law. But the legislature felt it was important, and we can't adopt any comp plan amendments unless we do this. And we got a nasty gram from the state that said, hey.
I move to recommend to the city commission to adopt the proposed comprehensive plan text amendment included in ordinance 2023-10.
Based on that.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any comments from the board? From the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously.
Well, thank you for allowing us to one day be able to amend our comprehensive plan, because this would have ended all future amendments to it, not adopting this. Pretty much. They locked it down real good.
Okay, ordinance 2023-6.
All right, this is ordinance 2023-6, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23 land development regulations by amending article 1 general provisions, division 2 definitions, section 23.1-12 definitions, article 2 administration, division 3 permits, section 23.2-27 waiver, article 2 administration, division 3 permits, section 23.2-31 site design qualitative standards. Article 3 zoning district, division 2 residential district, section 23.3-7 SFR single family residential. Article 3 zoning districts, division 2 residential district, section 23.3-8 SFTF 14 single family and 2 family residential. Article 3 zoning districts, division 2 residential districts, section 23.3-10 MF 20 multifamily residential. Article 3 zoning districts, division 2 residential districts, section 23.3-11 MF 30 medium density multifamily residential. Article 3 zoning districts, division 2 residential districts, section 23.3-12 MF 40 high density multifamily residential. Article 4 dwelling development standards, section 23.4-1 secondary accessory dwelling unit. Article 4 development standards, section 23.4-10 off-street parking. Article 4 development standards, section 23.4-13 administrative uses and conditional uses. Article 4 development standards, section 23.4-16 mechanical systems equipment for existing residential structures. Article 5 supplemental regulations, section 23.5-1 signs. Article 5 supplemental regulations, article section 23.5-3 nonconformities, and providing for severability, the repeal of laws and conflict codification and their effective date.
I mean, we just got a lot.
I missed the big one.
So I drafted this ordinance title in particular to torture Elizabeth this evening at all of our. So basically going through this, here's how, when we go through and we review permits and we look at things over time, we have a list, a Word document table. And every time we see something that needs to be tweaked or needs to be modified in some way that's not working right, we add that over many, many months of these little tweaks. And then when we go and we open up the LDRs to do an amendment, we then collect all of those little things that we've identified and we put them together and then we bring them forward. So some big concepts here. So first, let's really start with, there's a couple definitions. This is again, just really clarifying. We have established a new lodging use. Lodging is hotel and motel. So we have hotel and motel.
Can I ask where you are, please?
Oh, I'm on Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, is there a line? Exhibit-
251. 251 and 255. So basically in our use table, we refer to lodging instead of hotel and motel. So this is clarifying in the definition section, again, a tidy up, that a lodging is a hotel and a motel. It's housekeeping. There's a lot of these housekeepings. Again, we didn't really have a clear regulation for pawn shop. So there's some amendments in there to establish regulations, clear regulations for pawn shops. And we also created this concept, which we've seen employed around the state, of a street wall. And basically, when we have a lot of these non-conforming properties where the property set back and they have the parking lot in the front. Well, they don't meet our minimum build-to lines in commercial. And now a lot of this doesn't impact you because a lot of these Dixie Highway, these are mostly Dixie Highway issues. So, but you are the other half of our LPA, which is our land planning agency. Land planning agency is established under Florida statute to review all land development regulation changes. And so you and the planning and zoning board together function as the LPA. So this is why you're seeing some of these changes, even though some of them don't really impact your review as much as they will impact the planning and zoning board review. And that's one of them. So going on to Exhibit B, waiver. So sometimes we have things where we're like, hey, we could use a little more flexibility in this area. We had a waiver section already established, but we wanted to add some review criteria and then allow the waiver to be applied to a couple other things. You'll see those things, they have to be expressly specified in the LDRs when a waiver is allowed, is the appropriate process versus a variance. Typically, a variance is the only process allowed. Variances, which I know you know, Jamie, have a very high, I know you, Tricia, Nadine too, all the, shout out all the attorneys, right? Like, so very high level of review. Sometimes there are things where we're like, does it need this much, you know, like, and you'll see in through there, we've established kind of these things. One of them is an institutional sign. So we don't allow changeable copy, except for institutional public uses on major thoroughfares, right? So if you have a church that's not on a major thoroughfare and they've had a changeable copy sign and they want to replace their changeable copy sign, they cannot do that now unless they have a variance. And we're like, hey, you've had a changeable copy sign for 40 years. You just want to do a digital one. Maybe a waiver is a better process with a lower review standard. So that's one of the waivers that we've proposed. So
I appreciate you giving an example.
Yeah, that's scary.
So we don't want to use this a lot, but there's sometimes when we're like, gosh, to put people through the variance process, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Makes, you know, but now it's like common sense and you scare me.
It's what I do. So, all right. So let's move on to Exhibit C. We're trucking through these, right? So we've got our street wall. So we talked about this concept of a street wall, right? We're establishing a wall, we're establishing that. So again, when we're thinking of new urbanism or OG urbanism, as I said, refer to Lake Worth, right? What we're doing is we're trying to create that pedestrian corridor, the security of the pedestrian walking. We don't want a lot of driveways, but we're retrofitting these heavily vehicular oriented developments. And what happens is that there's not investment in these areas unless they fully comply, which means a full demolition of their existing commercial building and then a complete rebuild. So we have seen the street wall concept employed. It would require board approval, and it would be in conjunction with allowing up to a 25% of expansion of the existing structure, which would allow flexibility in design. And some of these are, because of the way their inherent nature, it does not allow them to bring the new addition fully into conformance because of the site circulation, traffic flow, garbage, all of that. So it would functionally require the full demolition to do anything else. So this marries them. Again, not really you guys, but that's where this idea came from. It's just to kind of make some of our older existing 50s and 60s commercial developments function better, look better, be reinvested in. Okay, so now Exhibit D, Exhibit E, Exhibit F, G. All the, whenever she said the words, this is a residential district, all this is doing is amending the side setback for accessory structures. But because that rule is in every single residential zoning district, we had to amend every single residential zoning district to throw that in the title. So all it's doing is saying, if you have an accessory structure on a really big lot, you don't have to, so what we've been finding is some of our big lots, like our 100-foot lots, they can't put a pool 5 feet from the property line without a variance. So this would allow that to happen. And so the way that it's worded basically allows an accessory structure, whether that's an accessory not an accessory dwelling unit, it could be an accessory dwelling unit in districts that allow ADUs, but it could also be a pavilion, a pool, anything would allow it to be put up to 5 feet consistent with the 50-foot lot requirements. And especially now this does impact you because in some of our historic districts, we've had some of our large Spanish style homes on lots bigger than 50 feet, having trouble locating a pool and squeezing it in because of this rule. So this actually came out of historic for historic to make it consistent.
The example you just gave, that would, the pool would have been able to go within 5 feet of the property line anyway.
No, because the pool, the property was 100-foot wide.
Oh, 100 foot. Okay.
So it would have to be 10 feet off, but the orientation of the Spanish style home made them have to come in for a variance to be able to have a pool.
I'm sorry, I thought you said 100 foot.
So
So all of this is just addresses that 5 foot as opposed to the 10%.
Correct.
and so that takes us all the way to Exhibit I, which is really nice. We arrived there and we speed through. And now we've got our secondary dwelling, accessory dwelling units. You guys remember the issue is we have the accessory structure rules and we have the ADU rules. And then there's kind of a weird baby that happens with the two. So this clarifies the weird baby. So there's no more weird babies. Okay. So basically that's, so we're going to establish, we've clarified all of that. Minimum unit size, and then the total area of the structure of all accessory structures, because we had an accessory structure standard and then we had an ADU standard. And what happens if you have an accessory structure and an ADU? How does that get blended? And that was kind of the weirdness. And this is what these rules are intended to address.
So how did you cure that?
Well, we provided standards in the ADU. So the total area of all accessory structures for properties with both detached accessory structures and a secondary dwelling unit shall not exceed 60% of the total area of the primary building, including any attached structures having a roof.
What was it prior to this?
It wasn't really 100% clear. So we were using the 60% threshold.
Well, you didn't have a percentage of.
No.
Not of both together.
It would just be a detached accessory structure can only be 40% of the size, is that right? Okay.
And then the ADU was 60%, so we're using the 60% for the total.
So if I want to put a garage on the back of my property now, 40% to 60%.
So now this is clarifying so that we don't have to figure out that math. So now it's your garage and your ADU together can't be more than 60% of your house.
So if you just build a garage and if you're in single family, this doesn't apply to you because you can't have an ADU in single family. So this is not your jam chip. I'm teasing.
Put a garage, right?
You can put a garage as long as it doesn't exceed 40%. But if you're in a multifamily district, then you want to do an ADU. So you want to preserve your single family home and do an ADU and a garage, or you want to do an ADU and a garage together. Then all of
them together.
it just crystallizes what we were already doing. Okay, so off-street parking. Shell rock is not semi-permeable. It is not.
It's compact.
It's too compacted. It does not drain water. It is not semi-permeable. That was oops. Shell rock needed to come out. So you can have shell rock, but you cannot compact it. Thank you, those words. You cannot compact it if you're counting it towards a semi-permeable. So that was the clarification. So
uncompacted shell rock.
Uncompacted shell rock. So again, administrative conditional uses. This is again establishing for when pawn shops happen with or there's money business services and pawn shops. If we get a money business service with a pawn shop, which sometimes co-locates, it's the more restrictive of the two. So that's establishing that. Mechanical systems.
Hold on a second. And we have the total required residential parking shall be reduced by 25% for development to provide no less than 50% of the total units.
Yeah, like-
Unrestricted or affordable housing. That was in the minimum, just below the shell line.
Mhm.
Okay, what's the change there? This
Is
was
that in
line,
accordance with the workforce
line
housing?
816.
So this is in the comp plan. So if you have a workforce housing project, you can reduce your parking by 25%. If you meet, if you meet our workforce housing program. It's been in the comprehensive plan for years. And so when we did the workforce housing ordinance, it just didn't make it to the off-street parking to clarify, to refer back to that comp plan requirement. So it doesn't change policy, it just reflects what is.
Okay, and this is not for off-street or on premises, this is.
This is for off-street. The section is off-street parking.
Off-street, okay,
Mhm.
and reduces it by 25%. So if a project was required to have 40 parking spaces. If it's
Workforce housing, and it meets the provisions of that section, yeah. And that's actually was adopted in the main ordinance by the city commission, and it's reflective of the comp plan language. So that's no change at all. That's just putting it into place. So we leave a little nugget to remind ourselves that it's there and it doesn't get forgotten until then.
now on to money changing.
We already did money changing. Mechanical equipment. Okay. So we have this provision that if you have an existing home, you may not have availability in your side area to put your mechanical equipment that complies with the side setback, which is the standard. So for existing houses, there's a process we go through where we say, okay, show us how you can put your mechanical equipment in a location where you can still have mechanical equipment to your existing structure, but it's as close as possible, basically. But it didn't really say, there was no minimum to the property line. And what has happened in the past is people have put their mechanical equipment on their property line. Not since I've been here, okay, because I was like, no way, because what happens is you have to go onto your neighbor's property to service your equipment. So it is a property rights issue. And we had a recent case, somebody challenged us and they said, show me in the code where it says I have to have a certain setback. And we're like, we can't, but you still can't do it. And we're going to put it in the code.
And now it's gonna be in.
And now it's going to be in the code.
Did we just have a case in front of us that had
The nursing
Senior
home.
place.
Yeah,
Yes.
M Street.
They wanted to put the mechanical equipment in the front yard. That is not allowed. But in the side setback, you might be able to put some in the side setback. And that is the reason why that's in there is a very good reason. Like there's a lot of weird, right? This is a 100-year-old city. A lot of the development over time. People built these properties without central air conditioning.
Yeah.
And they want central AC, and it's a reasonable thing to be like, I like central AC. I'm not gonna judge somebody for that, So this allows them to have central AC, but they can't have central AC where their AC guys got to go on the neighbor's property to take care of their AC. That's not right either. Okay. So moving on, this is the changeable copy sign that we discussed in M. N is the street wall. And so what this is in the non-conforming section, we introduced that there can be some shifting to the front building line if the street wall is employed. And then again, we also mention, this doesn't change anything, but we mentioned that, the 50% rule where you guys preserve the structure and you allow the variance, the base flood elevation variance. We put that in there. So again, just this is a tidy up to reflect existing policy and operations. You all have the power as a certified local government board to grant a base flood elevation variance. That power is given to almost nobody. FEMA's super stingy with it. You guys are one of the few exceptions that can do that. You are lucky. It's like they're not easy with that. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, so we have to approve this?
You don't,
No?
you can do whatever you like. You can recommend or not. We would love it if you did.
Okay, you would like to hear a motion to recommend this? To the city commission?
I would love that, but
Recommend the city commission to adopt the proposed building architect amendment included in ordinance 2023.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
You're gonna be a shoo-in for this.
Aye. I'm small.
Okay.
Move over one seat.
I have, and that's pretty much the end of the agenda, right?
well, we have planning issues and department reports. Just chill. I have good news. The Gulf Stream is going to come in. So we already have we have the initial plat application and we have a time extension coming in. Give them a little more time to finish up with their building permit approvals. And we've heard that they're coming in with their permit by the end of the summer. So they've submitted some new applications. So that's really good. And we see a lot of movement. So we're very hopeful and we're excited that we're getting stuff in from them. So that's very good. The second one is we need to do a couple workshops because there's some of these issues outstanding, you know, like with the metal shingles and with some of the other things. So we really need to kind of discuss this and have another policy workshop on it. So we really have consistent direction over time. It's hard to have those discussions. And why I pushed you so hard today is because what happens is when you guys make a decision, we get it just gets to be a lot for us on our end. So we need to kind of tighten those things up and make a choice. The real hard issue is the clear, not clear, because that's so often in the literature that it has to be clear. And so we got to be real tight on that. And we've got to really look at that, because remember, all of your amendments to your stuff is reviewed by the state as well. And the state weighed in last time, and they were not super friends, but of our VLT standards, but they backed off because it was an issue that they were grappling with, but they were like, cool, this, but no more is basically what the state told us from the, so we have to be very tight on that. One more thing. Oh, I do want to go in and Elizabeth's going to do a presentation next time, just talking about, you guys are most of you are attorneys or have been on the board, you'll pick it up really quick, but just again, structuring how, when you disagree with staff, the things you need to say and how you need to say that to justify your decision. And then so that this doesn't become a pattern, like if it's to this, what you need to say and how you need to say it and how you need to think about those things. And those are really important. And that's it.
I'm just gonna add to that. Make sure when you guys are reviewing the agenda and you see things that are in your neighborhood, you consider your voting conflicts. And if you have questions or you're not really sure if it's going to apply to you or not, give me a call. Let's walk through it. Those are really important. If you have spoken with somebody outside the process, or if you've driven by the property, make sure you're making your disclosures as well.
It was kind of blindsided a little bit, the property about the demolition. I thought that the place had been sold, right? There had been a for sale sign on it for a while, and I thought it had been sold. I went and found, it appears that the owners that have had it for years now, they still live in the neighborhood. And you know, apparently they're still renting it out. So we didn't know who the owner was tonight. It wasn't disclosed.
I would have liked to have heard from an owner.
And yeah, I mean, and so I'm hearing the elderly owner, and I'm like,
Yeah, so just all of this is, it's fine. All of it just disclosure to protect you.
Right.
That's just the note. So just say more, you know, say extra. If you don't disclose stuff, you don't have to disclose if it makes you feel better. Better to just say it. So no, just.
Okay, I'd like to start off the comments, and I apologize for this, and I don't want to do this, but sort of like I wrote it all out. Comes time when all those board members are going to eventually have to step down and just become citizens and young professionals, step up and take the city to a more prosperous future. I'm not forget about that. I recently had a real big bad bout with code enforcement so piddly that it just really ticked me off. It's been going on for over a year, and for my forgetting to call for land use or my property inspection.
Inspection, yeah, like everybody else in town, yeah.
And then when I went on vacation, they took me in front of the magistrate and they recommended $100 a day fine.
Oh,
And so it came back and I had $1,000 fine or something like that, so I tried to get it, so, okay, well, what's the procedure? Okay, we gotta, bring it, I was never out of compliance. What happened,
Right.
somebody called in about a chicken on my property. They came out and said, you don't have a chicken. I said, I know I don't have a chicken. So that's okay. Oh, but we noticed you didn't call for your inspection. But anyway, $1,000 later, the city got my $1,000 and they tried to go in front of the magistrate. And I was trying to make a point also here. We sit as a board, as neighbors. 20 years ago, when Betty Resch, mayor, was the city attorney, I sat on the code enforcement board.
Yeah.
And it was basically, if my case would come in front of a group of neighbors and said, oh yeah, you're in Montana, when the magistrate here, and it was 3 weeks before you had to renew your thing and you got your inspection, there was no issues with it. I sat in a room with William Waters and he said I should not have gone in front of the magistrate. Talked to Betty Resch about it. She said, well, it sounds pretty piddly. So anyway, since they decided to go ahead and really ram me through the whole thing, I gave them my $1,000. But over the last 3 decades, I've been volunteering on many boards, CRA, code enforcement, this board. I've enjoyed it. I've learned one hell of a lot. I really have. I've appreciated, and I can't, the reason I'm here tonight, I wouldn't resign the next day.
yeah,
But the reason I'm here tonight is because I knew that these things needed to go through to the state, and Aaron asked me to do that, and I like listening to Annie too, so. But anyway, so I'm resigning, and I'm in my first meeting as the chairman. But you all might want to discuss who you want to fill this seat, and the city commission needs to fill another vacancy again. But like I said, I appreciate, I've enjoyed every moment I've had on the board. It's just apparently they think it's time for me to move on. Plus, I was not going to be reappointed anyway in August. I mean, neither are you.
correct.
So they made a very strong point that they want to get all the board members that have been on and appointed by somebody else. They want them off. So I'll do a Mike Lawrence thing and leave them on.
There you go. And we appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And that's been an issue with code since I've lived here for 30 years, like, Jim. Not up to the citizens to call up and say, okay, I'm ready, come in and stay. I'm sorry. Send a friggin' letter and say,
You pay for, they issue you a license. You pay for it and they issue you a license, says right there. And then they told me I don't have a license. Yeah, here it
it
is.
is.
There's no look on there. You're supposed to call for inspection, so therefore this is invalid.
Yeah.
So
That's
they're
been a
issuing,
city
they
problem.
pay for it. And I said, well, yeah, got you. So like I said, they got me and I'll chalk it up to experience. And I will really miss sitting on the board, even after they didn't reappoint me, but anyway, and I appreciate, appreciate interacting with everybody here. I love the discussion and, but thank you all very much.
Thanks.
For everything. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your service, Chip, and we're sorry you're going, but we wanted to give Chip a little, when we have a board members leave, I told him he had to receive a certificate of thanks if he decided to resign. So I'm going to inflict that upon him. So we'll get that out to him.
Oh, thank you very much. Suitable for framing, I hope.
It'll come in a frame, like, come on. Yeah. I'm gonna like luxury it up at the dollar store for you. Thank you, Chip.
Land that cattle.
All right, I really appreciate it.
Last time.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
No.
No, okay, so therefore adjourn.